Arm my microphone. There we go. All right, it is 6:35. Sorry for the delay in starting. This is City of Redondo Beach Planning Commission, Thursday, June 1st. And we're having some, probably still some Zoom problems, but we are live up on YouTube. So I'd like to call the meeting to order, and let's have a roll call.
Commissioner Lamb?
Here.
Commissioner Hensley?
Here.
Commissioner Hazelton?
Here.
Commissioner Gaddis?
Here.
Commissioner Godick?
Here.
Commissioner Boswell?
Here.
All right. Commissioner Lamb, will you do us the favor of leading us in a pledge to the flag?
Certainly. Ready to begin?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. I have approval of the order of agenda. Do we have any issues with the order of agenda tonight? All right, can I have a motion? Oh,
Motion to approve the order of the agenda.
Second.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those against say no. Passes unanimously. Blue folder items. Blue folder items are additional backup materials to administrative reports and/or public comments received after the printing and distribution of the agenda packet for receive and file. Do we have blue folder items?
No, we do not.
Okay, so we'll skip that. Consent calendar. Consent calendars are business items, except those formally noticed for public hearing or those pulled for discussion, and they're assigned to the consent calendar, and commission members may request that any consent calendar item be removed, discussed, and acted upon separately. Items removed from the consent calendar will be taken under excluded consent calendar section, and those items remaining on the consent calendar will be approved in one motion. I will call on anyone wishing to address the commission on any consent calendar item on the agenda which has not been pulled by the commission for discussion. Each speaker will be permitted to speak only once, and comments will be limited to a total of 3 minutes. Does anyone have a consent calendar item to pull tonight?
How's everyone look at me? Motion to approve the consent calendar.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And all those against say no. And the consent calendar, that is approved unanimously. Next is public participation on non-agenda items. This section is intended to provide members of the public with the opportunity to comment on any subject that does not appear in the agenda for action. The sections are limited to 30 minutes. Each speaker will be afforded 3 minutes to address the commission. Each speaker will be permitted to speak only once. Written requests, if any, will be considered first under this section. Do we have any written, emailed, texted, skywriting, smoke signals?
At this time, we do not.
All right. Do we have any, did they change the size of this looks a lot bigger than it used to.
It's higher, I think.
Oh, it's higher? Okay. I can't see over it. Do we have anyone here to speak on non-agenda items? It's very James Bond.
You're dating yourself. Very tall there.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Do we have anyone here who wishes to speak on any non-agenda items? All right. Next is ex parte communications. This section is intended to allow all officials the opportunity to reveal any disclosure ex parte communication about the public hearings that we have tonight. We'll start with Commissioner Lamb.
Okay, I have spoken with Mr. Kapovich. I have spoken with who else? Members of the public. I've spoken with also Commissioner Hazeltine. Time. Give it up.
Both of them?
Does it get confusing?
Yes, and that is it.
For me, J1 is none and J2 is just members of the public.
Members of the public and Commissioner Lamb.
All right, for me, members of the public and Commissioner Boswell.
So none for me on J1 and members of the public on J2.
And for me, some members of the public and Mr. Gaddis.
All right, very good. So with all that being done, I think it's time to open public hearings. We've got J1. J1 is a public hearing for consideration of an exemption declaration and conditional use permit to allow the installation, operation, and maintenance of a wireless telecommunications facility consisting of a new roof-mounted antennas on an existing building and an equipment area on a property located in the pedestrian-oriented commercial single-family residential zone. Do I have a motion to open this public hearing?
Motion to open the public hearing.
Do I have a second on this motion?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against say no. The public hearing is now open. Do we have a staff report on J1?
We do. Thank you, Chair, members of the Planning Commission. For this item, our senior planner, Antonio Gardea, is going to present it and open the meeting with that. Thank you so much.
right.
Thank you, Planning Manager Scully. The item tonight that's being considered by the Planning Commission is a conditional use permit for a new wireless telecommunications facility and the CEQA exemption for the installation of these antennas and equipment at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church. The property is located at 1122 South PCH. It's right at the corner of PCH and Avenue D. It's also known by the address of 303 Avenue D. This again is a new wireless facility, and I'm hoping that we can see we're not seeing anything. Okay.
No, it doesn't look like we have presentation on.
Okay, no, that's not it.
We had something that looked promising. We had a screenshot of something.
Well, I'll kind of go through. You can imagine it in your minds, in your mind's eye, what I'm describing here. But the property is the zoning is split. There's the front half of the property is zoned as C2PD. It's commercially zoned. It's pedestrian oriented, and then the rear half is residentially zoned. The front half, where the main church is, that's where the new telecom facilities would be installed, and they're installed in going to be installed in 3 different places. 2 along the facade of the building, St. Andrew's Church, in an area where there's like a brick facade. They're just going to extend the brick a little bit taller, and this is the screening material that they're going to be using here. So it looks like brick, so it'll be kind of, but it's transparent. Radio frequency transparent material, and that's what they're going to be using for that portion. And that's going to be facing PCH. There's an area immediately behind the antennas that they're going to have as an equipment area, and that's on the north side of the property. And then they're going to have some antennas in what is like a little bell tower, and that's facing the Avenue D side. And the screening material is the stucco. It kind of blends in. The structures are not going to be the bell tower itself is going to pretty much remain the same. The facade on the front part, they are going to extend a little bit taller to screen the antennas. There we go.
Here we go.
Yay. So these are photos of the site as it exists today. And again, this is the areas that I was talking about, the 3 different areas where they're going to be installing the antennas and the equipment. And these are kind of a closer up view of the antenna installations. The one at the bottom there is the tower, and the other two are at the facade. And we have, this is what I mentioned, how in the front they're going to raise it a little bit more. It's going to be really kind of imperceptible. And so this is the before and after from the elevations. And then this is from the side. You could see it's just pretty much looks the same as far as height and the overall look of the building. These are the photo simulations that were provided. And again, you can see the picture in the right top corner is the existing, and then the larger picture is what it will look like. So the front facade, and this is the tower. Again, the tower, the changes there are imperceptible. Mm-hmm. They did review a number of different sites to fulfill this coverage gap. There's a coverage gap north of Nob Hill going towards the beach. And after exploring a variety of sites along PCH, this is where the applicant landed. And it was a pretty exhaustive search. Maybe the applicant is here tonight. He could tell you we've been going back and forth trying to find him a location for maybe a couple of years now. Again, the typical concerns with these wireless facilities are the aesthetic concerns. What is it going to look like? Where are the antennas positioned? Where is the equipment location going to be? And then if there's going to be any potential parking impact. These are unmanned facilities. There's just occasional maintenance. There is a parking lot immediately to the south where any technician could park. They could also park on the street if necessary. So we don't foresee any impacts with either of those items. So our recommendation is that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution adopting the categorical exemption and approving the CUP for the wireless telecommunications facility. The applicant is available to answer some questions here if you have any. We did have a couple of neighbors call in asking about the facility, and they just wanted more information. And so once they saw the plans, I think they were pretty satisfied, and I think the one neighbor was concerned if there was going to be any antennas protruding up and blocking his views. That's not going to happen. These are pretty low scale and not going to affect anything like that. With that concludes our my staff presentation. If you want any more details, the applicant does also have a presentation available if you would want to see that.
Okay, I have a quick first question, just for the public's edification and just clarification. The CEQA categorical exemption is that Planning Commission is going to designate that this project does not warrant a CEQA analysis and report prepared, et cetera, right?
That's correct.
Okay, good. Any other question? Do we have any questions from the commission? Do we have any questions from the public? We have a, yeah, well, we'll swear them in. Okay, I've got to swear you in. I don't have a swearing in booklet, but, oh, are you John McDonald? No, well, we have you're John you're okay. So we have a written to speak on J1, and let me swear everyone in who intends to speak. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right, great. Well, let's call John McDonald first because he has submitted a slip, and then you can speak.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Antonio. That was a great presentation. I am here for the applicant. I'm here for any questions you guys might have. I don't think you had any, but he might, so.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Please step forward and state your name.
Good evening. My name is Gary Shamus. I live on Avenue C. My two questions are maybe from the applicant. Approximately how much taller than the current design, the current church positions for the two on the side of the church, and then for the bell tower goes from this height to what height going forward approximately?
I think staff could probably address those questions. And if the applicant has anything to add, that'd be great.
So the new screening material will be approximately 3 feet in height above that existing for the facade that's in the front. So
Can we go back to the picture in the
Yeah, I'm gonna-
presentation of what it shows? Because I think one of the important things is that it doesn't extend anything beyond the peak of the roof that's already there, right?
That's correct. So in this elevation here, those additional portions above those banners would be about 3 feet in height. And so that's the additional height that's necessary to screen the antennas. And there's not going to be any additional height on the tower at all. That's going to be within the existing facade there.
Is there any follow-up, any other questions? Okay.
Just the power level, what?
I think that would be a question for the applicant, but typically on items like this, they have to meet the FCC standards for these antennas. So, and then there's usually signage posted outside warning folks about the exposure levels there, but definitely something that maybe the applicant can respond to.
So we conducted an EME and the facility is compliant with all standards. So as long as you are underneath the antennas, so 23 feet or under, there won't be anything out of compliance.
Yeah, but I think his question specifically was the power level.
For the antennas,
Yeah. You're creating what power?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I'd have to look at the EME report.
Do we have any of that in our information?
There usually is in the attachments, there's an RF report that has some of that outlined, some of the details on that. That's part of the submittal requirements.
Okay.
Chair Geddes, may I ask a question while we look?
Yeah, absolutely, please.
Sorry, I had a question. How many service visits do you anticipate, or any, or? does
Usually
something come up
once
before?
every few months.
Every
Typically.
few months,
Yeah,
okay.
the only time they usually go out there is just to see if everything's kosher every 3 months. And then the only other time would be if the facility were to go down for any reason, so they can fix it. But that hopefully never happens.
Okay, so every few months. And are those typically like, if they're planned, they're Monday through Friday during the week? or-
They business hours. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yes, please. Commissioner Boswell.
So you represent the telecom company that's going to be
AT&T,
putting this
yeah.
in?
Yes.
Do you work for AT&T?
I don't. I work for a company called Redondo. We're the vendor who we do the architecture. We do all the engineering, the calcs, and the permitting and leasing for them. The only thing we don't do is the construction.
You don't do the construction, which is where I was going with this. So do you know how long it's going to take to add these additions to the church and to get the antennas installed, and
So I
what
would
kind of
say
time frame are they
hopefully
looking at?
typically between 3 and 5 months maximum. It really just depends on how much they need to structurally support, I would say, the two sides facing PCH on either side of the church, because those are entrances where people can walk in underneath. So that would probably take the longest amount of time.
So are you expecting to have structural issues that you have to
No.
reinforce anything?
When we get to construction drawings, we do calcs that will be approved and stamped by an engineer. But typically, depending on how much reinforcement is needed, that would be the longest part. I don't know at this point. We haven't done the structural calcs yet. We will when we go to building and safety.
So over these several months in which the installation occurs, it's not every day, it's just as they get to the next level to do more work, right?
Well, we won't install anything until after it's gone through building and safety, and then planning has done their final look at it. And then at that point, usually within a few months after we've received our approvals, we'll start construction. And then it typically lasts, again, 3 to 5 months, maybe 6, depending on the site.
3 to 6 months, but there's not work being done every day, right?
If they will try and get work done Monday through Fridays. It depends on what they're doing for this. I don't think work will be done every day because they're not doing any grading. It'll just be reinforcing those two sides. So,
But still 3 to 6 months working almost every day. It sounds a lot more involved than it's implied in the write-up on it. It sounds very involved if it's going to take as long as 6 months to build this.
Well, it's just, I can get you a construction schedule from the GC. It will probably take less time, but I don't want to
But it sounds like a 3-day job, but now you're saying it's as long as 6 months?
No. I don't think any wireless facility is a 3-day job with what goes into it, making sure everything's safe, making sure everything's done, everything's compliant. Each facility will take at least a few months.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And while you're working on there, are there hazards to people walking into the church, or
if there is anything that they need to do on either entrance, what we do is we usually conduct a pre-construction walk with the church. And if for whatever reason, say we're working on the north side of the parapet, we will, and the church is like, we can't close both sides. We need to close one side. If we don't want people walking in there while we're doing construction, we'll make sure not to construct on the other side till one side's done. So typically those are the things that slow it down. If we could do it all at once, I would say it'd probably take a month, but to work around with what the church is going, I know they have food drives and stuff throughout various days. We can't close off the entire church to do construction. So they most likely will do it in parts, which kind of extends the timeline.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I can't find anything in the materials referring to the power of the signal amplification or transmission or anything like that. But you say normally there is some.
We do have that. He has it in the file.
Oh, but it's not in the report that we have.
I don't believe it's attached to your report.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Typically there is an EME report, and if there's not one, it could be a condition of approval. I know we ordered one on this site, so I can get it to Antonio if it's lost.
And we're very limited locally in any regulation of the power or frequency. That's all governed by the FCC and OSHA. And that report that they provide documents that it's certified by a RF engineer and then in compliance with OSHA and FCC regulations.
Okay. Sorry, we can't give you a more complete.
Yeah.
I think by saying that OSHA's going to go look at it and approve it, that, from a human safety standpoint.
Correct.
People walking past it all day long.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions from the commission?
I have a comment.
A comment? Go ahead.
Okay. First, I want to thank the members of the public for coming and expressing your concerns. We always love the public to come. So in terms of the CUP, conditional use permit criteria, there are 4 criteria. Just for the public's benefit, just for clarity here, we are to determine the size and shape. Is it adequate? Is adequate for the development or the project that is being proposed? Is there adequate access to the street? Is there no adverse effect? Number 3, is there no adverse effect on the abutting property? And that's what your questions were. And it seems like we've determined as a commission that there is no adverse effect on the abutting property. And is it deemed necessary to protect the health and safety of the community? And I'm wondering, Senior Planner Gardia, I wonder if you could just outline what you found as what is why is this deemed necessary for the health and safety of the community?
Yeah, one of the things that we look at is that there is a coverage gap for telecommunications in the area. It does help with the public safety. So that's one of the big kind of goals or benefits of having these additional facilities that provide this additional coverage. And so we understood that there was a gap again between north of Nob Hill going towards the beach, in particular, those apartment units that are, or those condo units on Esplanade. And so it helps, provide communications to the public as well as the public safety, which uses that. So that's kind of the big benefit that we get from enabling these installations.
Thank you very much.
All right, any other questions or comments from the commission members?
Oh, I just have one other thing. And then the final is, I think you added in here that it meets all the FCC standards. We were talking about that just a moment earlier, OSHA as well. So in terms of addressing the concerns or protections for the public, we feel confident as a planning commission that the public has been, the concerns and considerations for the public have been addressed. Correct?
Yep, correct.
Okay, do we have any further public comment, either online, in person? Oh, we have one more.
Can I ask it from here?
You can. Have you been sworn in? Did you?
As a group.
Can't hear him on the.
Yes.
Okay, but yeah, actually, we need you at the microphone because it has to become part of the public record, and we are being broadcast live.
So my name is Craig Mandel. I live on Avenue C. And I understand the gaps in coverage because I've been at the beach by the Esplanade, so I understand that. So my question would probably be towards you. Is this just an AT&T tower? Do you plan on expanding it for Verizon, or this is just for coverage for AT&T users?
Just for AT&T. Another provider could. I'm sure the church would be amenable to those terms, but we spent a lot, Antonio will tell you, about 2 years trying to come up with a design that would fit well in the community. And so I'm not sure how they would design it to also.
Well, you may, I would think other carriers, if they've got the same dead spots, because I use Verizon, I've got that dead spot along with everyone else, they would want to go on the tower with you. It just makes sense.
It would require, based on our design, most likely an extension of the 3 foot that we're already doing.
So you don't think it would go over 3 feet? You would always, AT&T always would be at the top, and then the other carriers would be underneath that, you feel?
I don't know if they could go underneath, because right now it's at a 30-foot height, which means the antennas, they don't go very far. They only go about a third of a mile, about 1,500 feet north and south, and then just to the beach. So putting them even lower than that, you would get significantly reduced coverage. I don't know if that would, a provider would be worth putting in an installation for, just covering a couple blocks.
Okay, so this would be for AT&T basically, right? Okay. The other thing which I thought of is you didn't know what the power outage was, correct? Or you've got it, but you don't have it here. But there's a school there, right? They have a school in that property. Was that given any consideration at all?
Yeah, absolutely. The EMF or EME report considers the distance from the antennas and then identifies what distance is safe for both occupational and the general public. There's a different allowance for those two occupancy groups, if you will. So those are all mapped out and propagated in the EME reports that we receive, and they demonstrate that there's only thresholds that maybe exceed occupational within just a few feet of the antenna. And the general public can't get access to be in front of these antennas. So there's actually an exemption that they qualify for being more than 30 feet away at ground level.
Okay, and just the last thing, is there going to be any noise? I know the building they're constructing.
No, there's no generator plan for this.
Right.
So the antennas in the ancillary equipment emit kind of like a very low hum, but you wouldn't notice it unless you were standing behind them on the parapet. You won't notice them walking by on the street, or if you're in the church
or the residences that are pretty close.
No, you won't. None of them will hear anything.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments, questions on this issue? All right. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against say no. Public hearing is closed unanimously. Any discussion among the commissioners? Do I have a motion in this regard?
As soon as I pull it up. A motion to, hold on. to get the right wording unless somebody has it right now.
Oh, come on, Gwen.
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution by title only with all the findings and conditions therein and the CEQA exemption.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Can we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Lamb,
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley,
Yes.
Commissioner Hazeltine,
Yes.
Commissioner Gaddis,
Yes.
Commissioner Goddick,
Yes.
Commissioner Boswell.
Yes.
The
Passes.
passes unanimously. It's granted. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll have the. Yeah, okay.
What was that?
I think we're good.
All right. We're going to move on to our next public hearing. This is a public hearing for the consideration of an initial study, mitigated negative declaration and general plan amendment and zoning ordinance amendments that serve to implement and activate and make consistent the Artesian Aviation Corridors Plan Area. We'll refer to that as the ACAP. With the city's general plan and zoning ordinance. The ACAP and proposed general plan amendment and zoning ordinance amendments define a number of strategies and an implementable actions that will guide the future revitalization of the area, including an increase in allowed floor area ratio, and we refer to that as the FAR, from 0.5 to 0.6, physical placemaking enhancements, connectivity to surrounding neighborhoods, and new gathering spaces to create a sense of place and character. This is for the Artesia and Aviation Boulevard business corridors. Do I have a motion to open this public hearing?
Motion to open the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against say no. So the public hearing is now open. Do we have a staff presentation?
We do, Chair. Members of the Planning Commission, Sean Scully, Planning Manager. This is a long time coming. We've been on the ACAP trail since 2017. So we have a presentation for you tonight. This is kind of the first step in actualizing or activating the ACAP. So we've got a fair number of slides. We have with us tonight the Waterfront Economic Development Director, Greg Kapovic, and he's going to handle kind of the first half. And then when we get into the general plan amendment, zoning ordinance amendments, I'll take over and kind of start about 10,000 feet and then reference, if we need to, the resolution, which is really, that's where all the details are for the changes that we're proposing tonight. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and have Greg open it up and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, Greg Kapovic, the Waterfront Economic Development Director. It's a pleasure to be before you today. I don't think I've presented in front of you guys yet. I've seen you around, but I haven't actually formally been here, so it's good to be here. As Sean said, this is a long time coming. It's been a pleasure to work with Sean on this. He is, as your planning manager, an expert in all things planning at this point. He's been impressive so far. So real quick, to go into this, we're going to open the public hearing. We're going to do a little staff presentation. We'll take any questions that you may have. Then we'll open it up to the public. And then you guys can, of course, ask us additional questions, have a discussion, deliberation, and ultimately what we're looking for you tonight is a recommendation to City Council. No matter what, this has to go to City Council for ultimate approval. So whether you, essentially agree with staff's recommendation wholeheartedly, that's one way to go. The opposite is also the other way to go. And then there's also somewhere in the middle where you request certain changes be done, pending your support, of course. So just a little bit of background. I know this group is well versed in the ACAP, so this is really just for maybe the people that are listening in on Zoom and in YouTube land. But essentially the current situation along the Artesian Aviation Boulevard is that it's more car-centric. It's got a good amount of vacancy. There's upwards of 15% of vacancy. It truly needs a shot on the arm of B12, if you will, in terms of revitalization. And The boulevards themselves lend themselves to fast traffic, people cutting through in the mornings during commute hours. It's not very pedestrian friendly in that manner. It's loud during busy times. However, there are about 15,000 residents that live a quarter mile away, almost 22,000 that live a half a mile away. So it truly could be supported by the community. We just need to make some relevant changes to our zoning and general plan to kind of make that happen. Now, the good news is that this commission and the city council recognized these issues and adopted the ACAP in 2020. And really, the implementation measures that you're seeing tonight are really the first step in any of the implementation measures. So this is really our best step forward to get the process going. We realize that this isn't going to happen overnight. We've got a long process and a lot more implementation measures to make. But again, this is to get that going. What we're trying to do is strike a balance. We want to support the existing businesses that are along the corridor. And those businesses can rely on people that show up to work in those offices every day to go to lunch hours on a Wednesday afternoon, but then hopefully rely upon the surrounding community for that nighttime use and that weekend use. We think that businesses with this kind of 24/7, well, not 24 hours, but 7 day a week, we're not Las Vegas, with this 7 day a week atmosphere will attract more businesses. And once you get that foot traffic and that pedestrian activity, it'll just compound. You'll see some general improvements to the existing storefronts, and then ultimately, hopefully, actually wholesale redevelopment, right? So it's a domino effect, and we're trying to build up to it. Trying to get to the next slide here. So I'm going to go briefly over each one of the implementation measures that we're targeting tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Sean to kind of get into those details, really. But first and foremost, with the ACAP being approved, there's a lot of elements within the general plan and the Muni Code that are no longer relevant, or they don't point in the right direction. So really, we just need to make some housekeeping text amendment type solutions here so that the ACAP points to the general plan points to the ACAP, and so on and so forth. So it's really just tidying it up. That's the first and foremost. Another important one is that we actually want to allow what we identified as our preferred uses along the ACAP as permissible by right, and that is restaurant uses and office uses. Right now, office uses are allowed within the ACAP, but only on upper floors. What we're proposing is to allow that to occur on the ground floor as well. Really, that's a vacancy reason. That's a vacancy rationale. The marketplace is going to dictate itself. People are going to locate where they want to, but we're hoping that by opening up the options, that some of these vacancies will go away. In honesty, since COVID has struck, I think people have rethought how office space works. I think we can all attest that working from home does work. And certain employers maybe thought that wasn't an option, but COVID kind of showed everybody that it could be done. So a lot of big office types are scaling down in that sense. But office space still is needed. And what I think is great about the corridor is that we've got narrow and shallow lots. So the existing tenant spaces aren't very big. We don't have large office complexes here where we're going to experience people actually leaving to downsize. I think this is probably a target area for that relocation to occur. And you've got new businesses that maybe are starting up from the ashes of COVID that maybe just need to start out office, if you will. So I do think it's prime for that. And again, I think it'll help just provide options. Now, when it comes to the restaurant uses, that is actually permissible by right in a certain sense for those restaurants that are below 2,000 square feet. But as of right now, restaurants that are above 2,000 square feet require a conditional use permit from this commission. Likewise, any kind of outdoor dining, which is heavily sought over for pedestrian activity and that kind of like European atmosphere, also requires a conditional use permit when it's over 150 square feet. And we hope that we're getting over 150 square feet when we're implementing these changes to kind of spur that life. So what we're proposing is that we reduce that conditional use permit requirement in both effects. Now, I don't want to say that this commission hasn't done a good job with conditional use permits. In fact, you've done a great job. I think most projects probably turn out better after the fact that you've been able to review things. But that said, the business community views a conditional use permit in two ways. One, it's a level of uncertainty. They don't know, when they come over to request for your approval, if you're going to deny it, if you're going to change that proposal to a point where they no longer want to pursue. So maybe you get to a point of approval, but it's changed so much that they no longer want to keep going with it. So it's that uncertainty. In addition to that, it adds about 3 to 6 months to the process, approximately, just to hold a public hearing and to work with staff to get an application ready for your review, to do the analysis. So when you're talking about those two things combined, it's really easy for a business to say, you know what, I'm just going to go look at Hermosa Beach or one of these neighboring cities because it's just easier to get there and there's more certainty. So really what we're looking for is to to lift that process a little bit, create a little more certainty, streamline the process. That said, we're not going carte blanche here and allowing them just to move in. We are recommending that it be reduced from a conditional use permit to an administrative use permit. So you'd essentially be giving the power to city staff to go over any potential negative impacts that may occur in that sense. So there is going to be some oversight, but I think we can be a lot more nimble and a lot more quick to be a little more public service friendly to yes.
This is just in the plan area.
This is just in the plan area. That's correct.
Across the board.
Thank you for that
CPD.
clarification. Right. This is only for properties that front the corridor area. So even though we're making these changes to these specific zoning designations, and those zoning designations are citywide, the additional caveat is the property has to have frontage on Aviation or Artesia. Thank you for that.
In the commercial district.
Correct.
C2 CPD, right?
And MU1 as well.
Yeah.
And
Right.
MU1 as well.
MU1.
Yeah.
So in addition to those changes, we're also recommending that we spur the sidewalk activity, if you will. Right now, all the signage that's out there is really dedicated for, you either have to be across the street to see that the business is on the other side of the street. There's no A-frame signs. There's no what I would call blade signs that are pedestrian oriented. And there's no outdoor retail sales. So in combination with the outdoor dining, the outdoor retail sales, and the A-frame signage, we think we could get a little bit of continuity out there and show that there's life out there, In addition to the changes that I've already described, there's certain development standards that we can tackle as well to try to help, some of this redevelopment occur. And two of them specifically is new requirements, one for open space and one for pedestrian access points. Now, what we hope that this does is that when we get to the point that there's private investment flowing into this, that if someone were to approach a design review or a building permit, that we would actually require a certain level of open space that then further continues the ability to have outdoor dining, have outdoor retail space that may not exist today. So the redevelopment would be forced to create this space to further the efforts of the sidewalk vitality. And then finally, and maybe the biggest one, we do plan to adjust the existing FAR development standard from 0.5 to 0.6. FAR is floor area ratio. It really is something that regulates the massing of a building. You've got lot coverage, and that's typically the ground floor. Floor area ratio is the amount of square footage you have on the upper floors. And it's really regulated so you don't get this big box-like shoe box of a building. You want it to be like a tiered effect, But given that these lots are so shallow, so narrow, that the additional threshold for the upper floors would be really helpful, might make the project pencil a little bit better for anybody wishing to actually invest in the property. So, again, these are all implementation measures that have already been backed by both this commission and the city council. This is, again, step one of what we're trying to do here. The corridors won't achieve our perfect balance right away, like I said before, but, how do we first attract the restaurants and the office uses to choose this area? And I think a quicker process and more certainty will do that. I think the allowance of additional chairs will also do that. You've got higher turnover. Typically, when you have outdoor dining, the landlord will either not charge for the outdoor space or will charge at a lesser rate than the inside space. So allowing for more tables and chairs, that's more customer turnover, that's more profit per day. It just all kind of pencils out more and more and more, right? And then once they're here, how do we encourage the private investment? I think the higher FAR will do that. And then once the redevelopment is occurring, how do we create that domino effect? I think the development standards for open space and for pedestrian access points, mid-block access points, to get connection to the neighborhood so that our residents don't have to walk all the way around to get there. Really, we'd like the pedestrians to use this to do their everyday errands, to do their dry cleanings, to hit the corner store, grocery store if they need to go to that personal fitness gym, that CrossFit that's so popular. We'd like for that to happen. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sean, and he can kind of get into the details of the actual line item crossouts and underline new language. And then, of course, we can open it up to any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Greg. So this next slide and these next few slides, really the point of these slides is just draw a straight line between what we're proposing and the ACAP. So in Chapter 6 of the ACAP, there's the implementation actions. And this basically just summarizes what the change is, just general. So we're about 10,000 feet right now. The reso's ground level. And then it identifies the implementation action item in the ACAP. So just running through these, first and foremost, to activate the ACAP, we've got to reference it. We've got to call it by name in the general plan and in the zoning ordinance. So that's really that first item. And within the implementation actions, the PM stands for placemaking. That's Chapter 3 of the ACAP. So the implementation of design guidelines, there's design guidelines that reference, update and amend your general plan and your zoning ordinance. So as well as PM 6, it requires the documents to all be consistent, which, by the way, is also a state law requirement. So once we adopted ACAP, we really couldn't activate it until we made sure it was consistent, and that's what all these changes are about. The next item is the FAR, which is the big incentive for potential new development to come in, and that's rooted in item 4 and 6, again, the same items in the implementation chapter. Next slide. Some of the other things that this is working on implementing that will help create these places that the residents adjacent to the corridors want to go to. Connectivity and access between commercial properties and adjacent residential properties. So there's specific implementation action, PM7, that talks specifically about allowing pedestrian pass-through routes with adjacent residential and commercial properties. So one of the things we're trying to do is create that mid-block access. So a new project comes in, we're going to require them to confer with an adjacent multifamily residential development that's 4 or more units to see if they can enter an agreement to provide access directly, and then some method to carry that access through. The additional item that we're really looking for here is we've got all these parking lots that are separated, and some of them are just a wall, and then you got a parking lot for that business and a parking lot for this business, and we need to get those connected. So that's another thing we'll be having conversations with project applicants to try to create that, that connection so we start to open up this parking. Then the next item, encourage professional business and medical office. Greg mentioned what we're trying to do there. Just allow it on the ground floor. That's really the only change. And I can tell you firsthand, even during and post-COVID, we've had, it's not uncommon for a real small office setup, a accounting firm, a law firm, trying to come in and we say, sorry, you can't take that space. You can only go behind the front space. So we're trying to like, well, do you sell anything? You know, can you put a little shop at the front of your office? And, you know, that's just not really tenable. And they usually just move on. So we'd like to see those spaces get filled up. Next slide. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Go back. Restaurants and outdoor dining and neighborhood serving. So we've got, of course, that's a big goal, really open up the activity on the corridor. And that really changes the orientation from the commuter corridor to neighborhood serving. And the implementation measures PM2, which really talks about what we're doing to the process by reducing it from a CUP to an AUP, is offer expedited permitting and streamlined applications for these preferred uses, both office and restaurant.
I would add that, you know, even though we're kind of deregulating, going from a CUP to an administrative use permit, any kind of new development that triggers design review would still be required to go in front of this body. Yeah. And if there was an AUP associated with it, it would be elevated to conditional use permit as a pair, and you would get a carte blanche look at the whole thing.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a real specific set of people just trying to move in and get this thing going.
Yeah, and that's important because we see this as well, where there's a tenant space, an existing tenant space of 2,200 square feet, and a small restaurant wants to come in, and we're hitting them with a conditional use permit requirement. And by the time we end that conversation, they're thinking about it, but we have not heard back from most of those individuals. So it's something that we think it's really targeting those existing tenant spaces that are a little over 2,000 square feet and allowing those to occur much easier. Next item, require future projects to be consistent with the ACAP. Okay, that's essentially, you will see and you see it in the resolution, the AUP, the CUP, the Planning Commission design review, all of our entitlements, discretionary entitlements now have a new criteria added saying that they have to be consistent with the ACAP. So anything that does come to you, that'll be a finding. You know, we'll have to make sure that project has some element that is called out in the ACAP and make that a finding in order to approve the project. Increase allowable FAR, we've talked about that. Encourage restaurants with outdoor dining and neighborhood serving. Again, there's a number of implementation actions listed there that speak directly to trying to encourage restaurants with outdoor dining. Zoning ordinance, let's see. So now this is the zoning ordinance. So it's really the same thing. You know, it's from the general plan. There's a couple of additional things in the zoning ordinance amendments. The general plan doesn't talk about A-frame signs. It doesn't talk about pedestrian pass-throughs. So there's just a few things in the zoning ordinance amendments that aren't in the general plan amendments. So we've talked about all these here. Outdoor retail is again, that's something that's just in the zoning ordinance, not in the general plan update. And that's, again, to create some more activity and create, you know, it's geared for the neighborhood. So that's another one. And those are there are specific implementation actions that call for this amendment. And then this, I think this is the last one here. Require usable public open space on projects greater than 15,000 square feet. That is actually an existing development standard for our mixed use zones. So we've basically just lifted that out of our mixed use zone, which is usually, you know, one of the underlying intentions of mixed use zoning is to create pedestrian atmospheres, areas. And so we're trying to, you know, really reorient the corridor from the commuter to the neighborhood and create more pedestrian orientation, right? So we took that development standard, basically, identical to what it is in the mixed use zone, and we've put it into the C2 and C2PD regulations. So, and there's specific implementation actions in ACAP directing us to do that. And the next one. Okay, so this slide, and I think this would be a good slide to help guide the discussion of the Planning Commission. This really is you could straw poll each other with each one of these items. These are, this is back up to 30,000 feet, right? This is just a line item for each one of the changes that we're making. Amending the FAR to 0.5, from 0.5 to 0.6. Require future projects to be consistent with the ACAP. Amend CUP requirements for outdoor dining areas, and the list goes on. This is just a summary list of all the changes that are detailed in the resolutions that we're asking the Planning Commission to consider tonight. So we can kind of sit on this, or come back to this when we want to turn it over to you. But if you could just skip ahead, because I have forgotten to mention, we have our environmental consultant, Rincon, is here tonight. We did a really pretty deep dive in the environmental documentation for this project. We did an initial study, very thorough. We discovered there was potentially some significant impacts with respect to cultural resources. We've got some old buildings along the corridor that technically qualify as historical resources. And then also, whenever we're creating planning documents that are going to lead to future development and you're turning over to the dirt, we've had extensive meetings with the tribes that have jurisdiction, if you will, over Redondo. There's quite a history. And so these mitigation measures would address any potential cultural resources on future projects and would be applied to future projects along the corridor. So with those mitigation measures, there is no significant environmental impact, and therefore we're proposing a mitigated negative declaration for consideration of the Planning Commission. And if there's any questions, details about the environmental documentation, we've got the consultant here tonight to help with that. And then we have our recommendation, which is to adopt the resolutions that we've prepared tonight. And if you would, Dave, go back to the, what's that?
I'm doing it.
Oh, you're doing it. Oh, shit. I keep looking over there. Go back to that slide and yeah. And then we'll go ahead with that. That ends staff presentation. We're available to answer questions, and we'll turn it over to you, Chair.
All right, thank you. I was going to ask if we have any questions or comments, but I see Commissioner Lamb already has her, she's jumping in right now. So why don't we get started then?
I'm going to have the easy questions first.
Okay.
Really like the idea of office on the ground floor. A couple of thoughts. The first is, what are you hearing from, you mentioned, Sean, that you had you've had to turn away people. What's the volume? Let me give some context. We are getting new bakeries, we're getting new food, other food, restaurants, small restaurants in the area. So there seems to be an interest. But you also mentioned medical, you mentioned accounting. And in talking with Greg, right, there's an optimism. There's an optimism about the potential for this, the street. What do you see? What's the reality so far in terms of demand?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't know we've shared this with the commission, but you remember, Sheila, and I'm sure you do too, Chair Gaddis, the market feasibility study that was done for the GPAC, right? And it was the big epiphany and, kind of wow that came out of that was how how much office demand there was in the city of Redondo Beach. It was 400,000 square feet was what this market feasibility study yielded in terms of an overall demand, pent up and whatnot. It was everybody was really shocked at that number. It was huge. That's why we shoehorned in the Galleria 75,000 to 150,000 square feet. I mean, the demand really spoke to it. So, that was then, right?
Pre-COVID.
Now it's like, okay, now what's going on? It's interesting. I don't know if you all know this, but in the planning department, we have to approve every single business license that comes in. They come over and the business license team, it's like 2 or 3 folks over there. They're walking over to our offices. I mean, we must get 5 a day. And most of the time I don't hear anything about it, but every few weeks a medical office is coming in and they're trying to go in on Artesia and sometimes at other places, aviation, and we can't do it. But we struggle with it because we're trying to approve business licenses. And so then it becomes this talking point. So it's fairly regular, medical in particular, and small scale, just moving in and opening up a small office, medical office. So it's a couple times a month. And I'd say maybe half or a third we can't help because that is a higher parking generation rate on top of the ground floor provision. So it's that's a tough one. The same with, and then the financial offices, they're less frequent, but,
So is the parking going to be, aside from opening up the ground floor,
right.
Is parking still going to be a constraint?
Yes.
And is that the next thing on the list?
That's the next step. We're going to bring that.
Is reducing the parking requirement for the plan area?
Just for the plan area.
But getting more
Generally, yes.
flexibility, providing more options for the developer to get creative to meet minimum parking standards. Such as shared parking, valet parking, mechanical lifts, things like that.
Tandem
parking.
Yeah.
Right now, all that isn't allowed per code. So creating flexibility so that they can squeeze more in there.
Okay.
So yes, we see demand, a small scale office.
On a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being high demand, where are we?
It's 7.
7?
It's a small business that's, I don't know.
But they want to be on the ground floor.
Yeah, and they want to just move into a space. They found a space that's got the right size. It's a lot of commercial structures, different sizes. It's not as expensive as other places. So and they want to be here, and it comes up fairly regularly.
So you don't feel a need to, it's another question, you don't feel a real need to be out there, Greg, recruiting new businesses?
That's what these guys do too.
We'll be doing that.
Yeah.
You'll be doing that. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's interesting you say that because that's how we got Grubhouse to Artesia.
Oh.
They came in on another site, and we didn't want them at the other site, and we kept hitting them with, "Hey, check out Artesia, check out Artesia, check out Artesia," and they were going up and down and found the site that they're going in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
Where did they want to be originally?
They wanted to go where the Mitsubishi dealer is. And we were You know, it was like, oh man, a car dealership is tough to turn away.
Oh, yeah, a lot of sales tax
were
revenue
like,
from
oh,
that,
man.
yeah.
And we really wanted Grub House. They had their plans all set. We were like,
It's
oh,
going to
this
be
is.
great.
What's that?
It's going to be great.
It's going to be
Yeah.
an interesting addition
Yeah.
to the corridor.
You've heard me ask, I've asked this question before, you and I've talked about it. It's having real estate offices on the first floor. This was brought up by Councilmember Narenheim for the District 1 down in the Village. Manhattan has had a problem with it. Is there any way to address that so that we don't get, now that we're opening it up on the first floor, not that, that it's not going to be inundated with real estate offices because, you could see why it would be a value,
Yeah.
right? A real estate, these are the houses that are in demand here. So
Yeah.
is there any ideas about that?
I mean, I can share that to my knowledge, and I could have missed some, but I haven't heard of any real estate offices trying to open up.
Okay.
It hasn't been a, a particular demand. It's definitely, I can recall vividly, some financial attorney offices and for sure the medical.
Yeah.
But it's not to say they might not have tried as well, but I haven't seen, it hasn't come up.
And no new residential in the MU, is that correct?
No. Yeah.
All right, Commissioner Boswell.
Well, there's no questions left.
That's all we had.
So it doesn't surprise me that there's a high demand for medical offices because I remember reading some years back that Manhattan Beach was actually looking to put a moratorium on new medical offices because so many of them had jammed into like Sepulveda and Manhattan Beach Boulevard and so forth. So that pushes that demand to other cities, and we were apparently unable to satisfy that demand because of limitations in the corridor here that we're today trying to rectify.
Correct.
And then we'll become Medical Office Row. But anyway, so that's interesting. So what's the problem with a real estate office being on the ground floor?
Well,
That just
they tend to not
tacky or what?
be very active. Realtors do a lot of work from my experience, from home and in the field. And so it becomes, I could see it being, low traffic, really low traffic. So, and what we're looking for is, we're looking to get an office use with employees that's then going to frequent the restaurants down the block, and create that daytime, midweek, lunch crowd, right? And then, as Greg pointed out, then at night, you got the residents coming in. So the restaurants just, they have more to work with. They have more clients.
So it's because of the way the employees don't actually, they're not there all day and they're not running out to lunch to eat and spend.
Yeah, the real estate, not as much, but, office workers,
Is there a way to limit real estate offices without throwing the baby out with the bathwater?
I mean, land use wise, no, an office is an office. And I mean, it'd be really hard to really identify one specific office type and say no to you. I guess you could, but it's rare to see that in the zoning code.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if we do this and all of a sudden a bunch of real estate offices want to open on Artesia, we're kind of stuck.
Potentially.
So just being aware that it's not our preferred business is nice, but there's really not much we can do about it.
Right. I think at this point, we're juggling with the vacancy rate right now. So we're hoping to just fill spots. We're hoping that becomes a problem and we can maybe come back and disallow it and say you've just got to be on the upper floors because we've got such demand for restaurants and personal service uses on the ground floor that we can let it correct itself over time. But you're absolutely right. It's
So that
it's
would be
it's
the
a
way to
balancing
do
act
it.
here.
Is segment out the office space to different kinds of office space that can be on the ground floor versus.
It's
required to be above?
probably cleaner to just allow them all on the ground floor, and then when you get economic vitality down there and more restaurants and personal service uses coming, and you want that pedestrian activity on the ground floor, to then just go back, adjust the code, require all office uses again on the upper floors, because you've got the non-vacancy down below, and you've got the pedestrian activity that we've been desiring. So, this is trying to fill up the vacancies and then create such a problem so that we're having to pivot in the future. But yeah.
Okay. So there seems to be a real push for pedestrian-oriented signage like A-frame signs. And I'm wondering how that impacts space on sidewalks. Our sidewalks on Artesia especially are very narrow. And now we want to have outdoor dining, outdoor retail. We want to have A-frame signs. People are going to have to walk in the street. So is there perhaps a better solution to getting a sign that isn't sitting on the sidewalk, perhaps a hanging shingle or something sticking out that people will see as they approach? You're not going to be able to put a whole restaurant menu on it, maybe, but I think the biggest concern, if I understood it correctly, was just identifying that this kind of business is here. And then people will maybe walk up and look at the menu posted in the window or whatever. And I'm sure lots of retail and restaurant places would love to have A-frame signs, but is it practical? As opposed to a similar option like a hanging shingle?
Well, I mean, I can
Sign?
tell you, I do the reviews along with kind of my counterpart in engineering for all the sidewalk dining permits that we have in the village. And we require them to itemize anything they're going to put in the right of way, including A-frame signs. And then if they do it, we have, in Artesia, we would have the ability to allow it. But we look at, it would have to be on the plan. It'd have to be located a certain way. The engineers are truly engineers. They're looking at every inch, the slope of the sidewalk, every dimension. And so that, if it would certainly, we would pick it up and make sure it wasn't an issue.
You might allow them in places where it's not an issue, according to engineers.
Correct.
And deny them in other places where
Yes.
engineers have said this is a problem.
Yes.
Okay. So it isn't just that everybody gets to have an A-frame sign because you still have to apply and have it approved.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't put anything in the right of way in the sidewalk without an
Isn't
encroachment
the
permit.
hanging sign still better? The more stuff you get off the sidewalk to allow for
We don't
pedestrians?
disallow those right now, do we?
Yeah, I mean,
I think we do. Disallow frame signs, I think.
I think we do allow the type of sign, the blade sign, to encroach actually 3 feet into the right of way. That's in our zoning ordinance, which is peculiar.
Are we
'cause-
talking like higher or?
Yeah, it's got to be, it can't be lower than 8 feet.
Okay.
So we do allow them. So that would be something that somebody could propose as well. The reason we have A-frame signs there is they're specifically prohibited in our zoning ordinance right now. So we just want to, again, more flexibility. Anything that we know supports the pedestrian outdoor dining experience, we want to, go ahead and allow it in the ACAP area.
So last question for me at this point anyway is the comment that businesses might look at a space and see that, we're going to have to go through a conditional use permit and these sorts of things, so we're just going to go to Hermosa Beach. Is there something different in the way our neighboring cities do this? Are we the lone place that puts this extra 3 to 6 month process in front of a potential tenant?
I don't know if we're the lone, but there are neighboring cities that do not require a conditional use permit for restaurants on the ground floor at all, regardless of size. Really, when you're looking at a CUP, you're looking at specific uses that could potentially have negative impacts to a surrounding neighborhood. When it comes to a restaurant, I don't know how much, unless it turns into like a really late night bar or something like that. But even then, you've got CUP restrictions on alcohol. So the restaurant itself, regardless of alcohol sales, it's typically, 11 a.m. to maybe 9 or 10 o'clock at night at the latest. And, if it meets development standards, if it meets parking requirements, if it meets all the standards that we've outlined in our municipal code, I don't foresee the negative impacts that could be solved at a conditional use permit hearing.
So my only concern is it takes the Planning Commission out of the loop, and we do a lot of due diligence on how projects are impacting those people who live near them.
Right.
And wanting to get concessions from the developer or the owner to make sure that things like noise and pollution and excessive traffic or late night activity are mitigated.
Sure.
So what's our guarantee that that'll still happen if the Planning Commission is not involved? And if it does happen, then why is the Planning Commission ever involved?
Yeah. Well, to your first question, the AUP criteria does specifically list parking and noise as criteria that staff will have to find that the project doesn't exceed, or impact. So we cover those. Those are the most common potential impacts when you're talking about, commercial uses that are in proximity to residences. So we have the authority to condition the project as well. So ours is something that we could also address through the conditions of the administrative use permit. We think we're covered. It's to your second point. There's certainly a place for the conditional use permit in restaurants. Well, the Grub House was a good example. That was, a 10,000 square foot area of development for the restaurant and the patrons, and it was all outdoor. So, we needed a lot of eyes on it, and I think we got a really good project out of that. But that's a far cry from a 2,000 square foot tenant space in an existing strip center. So, again, that's kind of where we're seeing that, because something like Grub House, even under the next phase, right, if we were to approve this, they're still coming to the Planning Commission because they're doing a Planning Commission design review. So you would, there'd still be an entitlement process, but the use wouldn't be, under, it wouldn't be an issue that you'd be able to address. It'd be design related.
Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that, because I didn't mean to say it like that, but essentially, if a restaurant was moving into an existing tenant space and not proposing any kind of outside improvements that trigger design review or anything like that, and they're simply just moving in, that's more along the lines of, well, they're not changing anything, they're just moving in. But if it is a new development, or if they are doing an addition, or they can't meet parking requirements, or whatever one of those combinations, or all three, they would definitely return to you guys through the design review, and then obviously the AUP gets elevated to a CUP because you're already reviewing the design review.
Yeah. You would then become the authority over the AUP.
I see.
Along with it.
So you don't get cut off completely.
Okay, Commissioner Godek.
Thank you. So one of my questions is restaurants. Is that a specifically defined thing, or is it like an umbrella term that would also include breweries, coffee shops, tasting rooms?
Yeah, it's defined. We've got 6 different definitions for restaurants. So, yeah, it's definitely defined. It's over-defined. We've got
I was
takeout,
worried about.
we've got delivery, we've got sit down, a lot of different categories. And so we look at, how they operate, and then we fit them into whatever category they closely match. So it would cover, a brewery would be a restaurant sit down.
Okay, but any use that fits one of those definitions would be allowed?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And then office space, that includes retail as well? Does that office include retail as well?
Retail's a separate use, but retail's already allowed on the ground floor.
Yes,
Gotcha,
yes.
gotcha. Okay. And then with medical uses, would that also maybe include veterinarians? Animal doctors?
Yeah,
See, why not? Yeah.
Have a separate use for that?
we do have that's a separate land use category. It's not included, I don't think, in our amendment. It's some professional and medical.
It would be separate because you've got potential kennels, you've got noise concerns, you've got odor
Yeah,
concerns.
that would be a separate office
Okay.
Would they be allowed?
requiring a
on Artesia?
CUP.
With these changes, would they be allowed on Artesia?
No, I don't think
These changes don't affect that land use category.
I'll double check the land
There are
use
some
table.
on Artesia.
Yeah. There's
Yeah,
there's
no,
a
they
couple
are,
of
but it would be a
veterinary
CUP
places.
thing.
Right, whatever the
Yeah, with the
existing
CUP.
regulations are would
With
remain the
the
same.
CUP, so they could be allowed there.
Topic, we're just saying, she's asking, right? You're not, you're saying, can there be vets on
Yeah.
Artesia?
Yeah, we do, yes, with a conditional use permit.
Okay, yeah, right.
Then my final question for now is, so there's the 15,000 square feet that would trigger required public use space.
Yeah.
Do we have a lot of properties in the zone that meet that threshold?
Not really, and it's really, we're looking for properties, to,
Fine.
to combine, so it's a bigger project, so it takes a good sized lot to then accommodate 10% of your FAR, right? So we don't want to hit the small ones.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Hensley.
Yeah, thank you. I have a kind of basic fundamental question. Are we, as the commission, expected to finalize this tonight and hash out final details? Is that what's expected here tonight? Or is this an initial conversation? What's the timeline look like for this overall?
Yeah, we're looking for a determination tonight on just the items that we're presenting. It's not like the whole, all the different implementation measures of ACAP or anything. It's just these really, first step. We see it as kind of low hanging fruit that, handles, a handful of the implementation measures and basically just puts the ACAP on, consistent with the general plan and the zoning ordinance, and then requires all the future projects to comply with it. So it's activating it.
Okay,
And
so if I hear you correctly, we're expected to be finished with at least this part of it tonight.
Yes.
And because just the environmental report's 300 and something pages. So not alone everything else with the material. And of course, I've seen the ACAP before and I've followed it along.
Right.
I'm just trying to understand what the expectation is for us tonight. So that was my first question, and I think I understand it. I have two more questions, and again, this kind of goes back to the ACAP up until now. I know it's been before us before, went to the city council, got approved, and there's been some changes along the way. And there's two things. One is before in the ACAP, there was some look at the street and how wide the sidewalks were and what the lane configuration and bicycle things. Yeah. Is that any part of the current ACAP, or was that like
No, it's all still there. All that's still there and was approved.
Okay.
And it's basically the implementation action for something like what you're describing is to have, special focused meetings with the public, have the engineering and public works department, start to really address that as the council determines it to be something they want to actually implement.
Okay. But for example, like we're looking at allowing A-frame signs. Currently, the curb width is X. And if they go some design with a much bigger curb, much more pedestrian friendly, maybe A signs and patio seating and other things make a lot more sense. So that's what I'm trying to understand, like approving, not half of it, but it seems a little bit like uneven. Like I would like a nice wide curb and A-frame signs and patio seating, but I worry about keeping what currently exists today and then trying to stick A-frame signs and seating and other things on a sidewalk that's not excessively large.
Yeah, keep in mind, A-frame signs, we're just allowing them to be, to be permitted, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be on the sidewalk. Outdoor dining can be, in the back, actually, near a parking area. They could open up a back patio, right? Some of those storefronts aren't right on the storefront. I mean, right on the PL, they're set back. And so their outdoor dining would be on private property. And, they have room to accommodate, that A-frame sign on their own property.
Okay. And the last thing, in previous discussions, there was talk of, besides outdoor dining, there was talk of rooftop dining. Is that still in ACAP or is that stricken out?
It's not in ACAP.
No. Okay, so it's just.
I've heard the same rumor.
I could chime in on that. So that empty seat, Councilmember Barrett, at our last strategic plan session a couple months ago, which is still being finalized, one of the ideas was to explore rooftop dining along the ACAP.
Yeah.
So if we were to pursue that, we would actually have to bring that entire document back to insert that implementation measure in there. So it is being planned to be looked at within this next calendar year.
I think it was one of the discussion, but maybe it was before the planning commission before. It probably maybe didn't make it out of planning commission or made it as a recommendation. City council didn't choose to adopt it or proceed with it.
Yeah, I do remember reading
I don't know which step that got.
The staff report for you guys, you recommended looking into it. I don't think it made it past council is what happened.
The first time I remember hearing it was at the public meeting we had. It was like a workshop, community workshop. And it was Commissioner Boswell who brought it up.
Wondering if you'd remember that.
Yeah, I remember that. And I was
I don't remember it at all.
It was great to hear, it was really interesting. So, yeah, it sounds like it might be coming back.
Yeah.
Because my other thought was, especially on Artesia, is like, all this outdoor dining is great, but Artesia is a rather busy, loud, not especially appetizing sometimes space. So I just worry about that.
Right.
But getting up above the traffic noise and having like those transparent barriers that you can be protected a lot from that sound and the wind, the breezes.
Yeah.
And if all that can be mitigated, I think Artesia is a perfect place for outdoor rooftop dining, as long as the roof will support
It
the
really
average
adds
weight of a person.
experience, a new experience.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had one more question. There's still time.
Please.
Okay.
No.
Last question. Now I got to find it again. Okay, I heard earlier when you were going through about the access between Artesia and the residents behind. I heard something about like if it's a more than 4-unit development or bigger than something.
Yeah.
Can you maybe go through that one more time?
Yeah, we're trying to create, again, instead of getting in your car and driving around the block or walking all the way around the block, if we can begin to open up some of those adjacent residential uses. Right now, the zoning ordinance, it requires a 6 to 8 foot high wall between commercial and adjacent residential. And we're thinking there could be some opportunities for, some access gate between those residences, especially the larger unit ones, and the immediately adjacent businesses. So, we're throwing it out there. Certainly if there's new development happening, that's, a residential and a commercial at the same time, we'd have them both at the table and try to figure out some way to maybe get a little, depending on, the dimensions of the lot, but an opportunity to create, pedestrian walkthrough all the way to the sidewalk.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I'm definitely in favor of it. I think, because a lot of those are R3 with a lot of 3 units right behind Artesia. So
Yeah.
that's why when I saw like 4 and above, I'm like, that's not going to be many, many units. So I'm not sure why there's that restriction. I think even a 3-unit one could have the same kind of, should have a discussion, should make some pathway, like, because that's the majority of what I would imagine would be developed.
Yeah,
So.
and that's certainly, a companion recommendation that we'd be happy to.
Okay, just want to make sure I understood it correctly. Okay, that's all my questions right now. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Hazeltine.
To clarify
Okay,
what he was asking, just real quick here. So this is would be a walking corridor from a private property
Yes.
to Artesia,
Yes.
but not for just anybody walking down Vanderbilt. Only the people, because you'd have to go onto their property and get to it,
Right, right. It would be just for those residents. And then in some cases, like I was explaining, if we do get, the opportunity for a new, larger residential development, we would be requesting that they create something all the way to Vanderbilt.
Okay. And Matthews on the other side, I guess.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, sorry.
Commissioner Hazeltine.
Yeah, I'd like to revisit the amendment of the CUP coming in front of the Planning Commission. I think that 3 to 6 months, I understand that that's a long time, but we only have them for maybe 30 minutes or 2 hours. So how do we get that 3 to 6 months in the planning department or somewhere else to go faster so they come in front of us quicker? Do we, as a planning commission, be prepared to do more meetings if we have to, rather than give that up? Because I think that's so important. I mean, when we look at what we've done, a perfect thing would be the wine storage. They came to us with just operating so many hours. We gave them 24-hour access. I mean, so there's so many examples. I don't think we've made a project worse. We've made every project better. So I think that we need to look at why is it taking so long on the other end, and how do we shorten that? But because the Planning Commission has a really important responsibility, and I think that having 7 more eyes on a project, you guys are really busy, is important. And so, I'd like to see there's something else to look at. How do we get it through your end faster, so that they're not told, well, I don't want to wait 3 to 6 months. We actually do a really good job, right, with businesses. We've done a great job. So we have to kind of say, okay, well, we take maybe an hour, even with the I think it was the bakery, they were hardly here, but we made really good changes, I thought. I think we extended their hours of operation. So could you guys look into how you make yours more efficient, your end, so that we can continue to have these come in front of us? Because I think it's really important. It's huge for the residents of the city to know that they've got seven more eyes on these businesses. Sets of eyes.
14 eyes.
Thank you. All right, I have a couple questions before we go for some public questions and comments. And I hate to dig real deep into a lot of things, but on page 85 of the agenda package, we have section 4, text amendment of the general plan, policy 1.15.8. I'm just going to read this. As it's written, require that the renovation of existing structures or new development on sites where parking lots currently extend to Matthews Avenue and Vanderbilt Lane restrict their vehicular access to Artesia Boulevard unless there are no feasible alternatives, and that areas facing abutting or exposed to residential areas be extensively landscaped to include a screen wall with pedestrian bicycle access if agreed upon by all impacted property owners, incorporating evergreen plant material covering a majority of the wall within a 1-year period. I can't figure out what that says. What is that doing exactly? I can't sort out. It seems to mash together something about greenery, a wall, and vehicular access all into one block paragraph. Yeah. And I can't quite straighten out. Can you explain to me what that's trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, that's 99% existing language.
Right.
And yeah, it's the intention is you're trying not to create a pass-through through the parking lot to the residential neighborhood for the vehicles. So we do allow parking lots on residential properties adjacent to commercial. So envision the business up on Artesia, and then you drive in, and then it's got a lot that is behind the business that goes all the way to Vanderbilt, and that's been turned into a parking lot for the business. We want that to have a wall all the way around it, and then, with landscaping as well, to help, soften, that wall. And now we're asking, let's have a pedestrian access way only. So
Okay, by adding the word vehicular to this, we've now said that pedestrian's okay, but we're just
Yes.
restricting cars. Okay, got it. Okay. Okay. All right. And so that's really the change there is all it's doing is saying we want to open all the other access. Before it was blocking all access,
Yeah,
including
correct.
pedestrian access.
Correct.
Okay, I see. Now, in terms of, I know a lot of questions are coming up about, planning commission being taken out of these decisions on restaurants that are over 2,000 square feet, right?
Correct.
And I guess I get it. We do represent red tape, and yeah, it's going to turn folks away if they have to come up in front of this mean commission that keeps turning things down.
We don't turn things down.
I know, but we have that reputation. So.
No, we don't. We haven't. Give me an example.
We shouldn't have that anymore.
Of business that we've turned down. We haven't.
We try to be nice, but we end up delaying projects by 6 months, and then they have to run the gamut here. It's kind of scary. So I definitely get it and why that's being done. All right. So with that, perhaps we could see if there are any public comments on for this. I'd be really surprised if there weren't a council member or two who wanted to talk with us.
Chairperson, we do have one e-comment in support.
In support.
Okay.
In support of the zoning ordinance amendments to ACAP.
And that's it? They just support, or is there a text?
So can we make a motion to read the e-comment? If there's only one and we don't have Zoom participants, then.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to read out loud the e-comment
I'll
into the
second
record.
that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. I will read the e-comment. It says, I support the zoning ordinance amendments to the ACAP and their adoption into the general plan. I think these amendments will help activate and enhance the Artesia aviation area for dining and placemaking. For the future, I'd like to offer ideas for additional enhancements. Increasing the FAR to 1.5, an item the City Council's recent strategic plan document. Widening sidewalks for enhanced pedestrian safety. Creating a parking improvement district with meter parking, paid parking at a city-owned lot, and parking permit programs for residential streets to reduce parking pressure and encourage walking/bicycle/transit. Enhanced bus stops along the corridor, including the BCT 102 with shade, seating, and lighting. Addition of bicycle corrals and protected bike lanes along the corridor to promote safe access by bike. And that's the end of the comment.
Who was the comment from?
This comment was from Brianna Egan.
Oh.
All right. Do we have any other comments from either online or any other?
Unfortunately, our Zoom is still down.
Okay. All right. Great. Commissioner Lamb.
I have a few brief and then one longer. First, before I forget, please send us the PowerPoint, if possible. Okay. All right. Okay, second, the zoning designations are not changed. Is that correct? There's no change in the zoning
Correct.
designation.
No change in the zoning designations.
Okay. Can we add recommendations to the resolution?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, here's the long one. I'm referencing Article 27 of the charter, correct? It's the charter. Okay. On page 71, 72 of the ISMND, it indicates that there is no new housing proposed. And that, and also within the body of the ISMND, the square footage is under 40,000, correct? I'm just going to read for everybody's reference, Article 27, Measure DD. Okay, so it reads, the city must show that the change does not significantly increase traffic density or intensity as defined by one. Okay, so significantly increase means any one or more of the following increases over or changes compared to the as-built condition of the neighborhood. 1, traffic generated by the project produces more than 150 morning or evening peak hour trips. I'm going to, it's a whole paragraph here, so I'm going to just leave that for now. 2, the density increase generated by the project produces more than 25 additional residential dwelling units. There's no expectation for additional residential dwelling units. Is that correct?
Correct.
There's no evidence. Everything points to no. Okay, and 3, the intensity of use generated by the project produces more than 40,000 additional square feet of residential, office, or non-residential floor area. So we've already determined that's been established. It's less than 40,000. So the question would be, if you could walk us through the comparison of traffic as built today to the full capacity at build out, to give us a sense of what the change might be at full, at capacity as a result of implementing the ACAP.
Sure. So we spent a lot of time on Article 27 and vetting what we were proposing in terms of these amendments against Article 27. It was actually it was a really deep exercise. We did a survey of Riviera Village, and I'll start with the 40,000 square foot determination. We looked at, the first question was, what is ACAP going to look like? What are we trying to do here? What is an actualized ACAP going to translate to in terms of land use on the corridor? And we didn't really have anything to go on other than we wanted to revitalize it. So we thought, well, where's the most successful existing commercial district we have, and what does that look like? And so we went to the village, and we looked at every single land use in the village and came up with a percentage ratio of the different types of commercial uses. You know, there's X percentage of all commercial in the village is restaurant, X percent retail, X percent service. And then we did the same thing along Artesia Boulevard to see, you know, what's different. And it was amazing. It really brought out the biggest differences were service commercial on the corridor versus office in the village. Interestingly enough, restaurant was about the same, but we had a much bigger area with Artesia and aviation than we do at the village. So we kind of extrapolated that restaurant use, knowing that was a use we did that would be more pedestrian oriented. But what we did is we looked at the amount of service commercial, and then we flipped half of that to office and half to restaurant. And we looked at how much service commercial we had, and we kind of targeted that use, and we added up all the square footages of, we did a 0.5 versus 0.6 for all those properties. So it was a, 0.10 new development on those properties that we wanted, or that we envisioned with a revitalized Artesia Boulevard would become office, 50% office and 50% restaurant. So we baked that all out, and it came out, about 36,000 square feet. So we felt comfortable. It's not a lot of development too, when you think about, 2.5 to 3 miles of linear corridor, spreading that, for example, it was almost 10,000 square feet at Grub House alone. We're talking about less than 40,000 along the whole corridor of additional development. So we're good on that front. And then the traffic impacts, similarly, it's spread out over the entire corridor. So it really diminishes the trips. Don't necessarily, if you're doing a development on aviation, aren't necessarily going to end up on Artesia. So there's a different dynamic with the trip generation and trip distribution for 36,000 square feet along the whole corridor. And we consulted with our public works director, our consultant, traffic engineers to try to get a handle on this. And additionally, the types of uses, office, for example, generates a lot less trips than retail. So, and service commercial. So if we're taking away service and putting in office, we're actually net reducing trips. And so we're really looking at the restaurant use, and that is about 18,000 square feet of restaurant use is really going to be our trip generator when we played this out. So we actually had the Grub House with a trip analysis that was just done for 10,000 square feet, 9,000 something, which is a little more than half. And we got, we looked at all those numbers, and after looking at the numbers that they generated, it was still less than 100 trips distributed, because Grub House net new trips were 47 for peak hour.
Is this VMT?
We did VMT for that too, but this wasn't a VM. The Article 27 isn't a VMT threshold. It's a trip generation.
Right.
So we were doing the kind of the old model. Article 27 is, from a few years back. So
less than 100. You said.
Yeah. So we were a little bit less than 100. It was rough. We're still confirming a few things, but it was pretty clear after that run through and exercise and using a real recent example of the kind of use we're looking to get more of. We felt really comfortable that we were outside and under all the applicable thresholds for Article 27.
So I think Article 27 also indicates no above current LOS.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so far you haven't really configured what the LOS actually would be, but I'm hearing you say that it's going to, that your calculation is that it's lower than existing because you're swapping out the retail with office.
Yeah, maybe some retail or service commercial, which are both higher traffic generators than office. Right. And they have different peak hours too.
And different peak hours.
Yeah.
Okay, and nothing lower than, I think it was an E, right? Now that it wouldn't create the additional traffic even with less than 100. Your estimation is that it's not going to make any of those intersections less than an E.
It's not going to trip those thresholds that are measuring
E.
intersection capacities.
Right, right. We're not going to be going to F, is that correct?
Yeah, no, because we're not doing it. And Article 27 was really written for a project-specific development. And this is, it's different. And
Right.
it's a little bit incremental change on various properties along the entire corridor. So it's really, so let's say you have automotive repair at one site and it gets flipped over to a restaurant. There's a lot of existing trips, and it's a little bit bigger restaurant than you had square footage of the automotive repair, but the automotive repair is a higher trip generator. So, well, not higher than restaurant, but they're comparable. And so there's kind of a wash.
Right,
in essence.
right. And I think it described that in the VMT, also in the what are we calling this? The IM, the document that, what are the documents?
Oh, yeah, the ISMND.
Yes, the ISMND, right? That all the calculations are based on the fact that that the trip generation and the traffic is going to be lower, and also that it's local. It's not, the VMT didn't apply because it's not essentially.
It's local serving.
Right, it's all
Yes.
local serving, and it's not moving from LA to, right?
Yeah,
We're not bringing in
correct.
long driving people.
Yes, yes, absolutely. The VMT has different thresholds, and one of them is if it's local serving commercial.
Right.
Under a certain size, it doesn't become a potentially significant impact per the new CEQA metric, which is the VMT.
Right. Thank you. I tried to say that, but
We're barely just getting it.
Oh, man, VMT is a nightmare.
Yeah, that's.
Okay.
I have a question about the potentially significant unavoidable historic resources impact.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the mitigation measure is just going to be requiring properties that are of a certain age to go through an assessment to see whether or not they're eligible to be on the list, and they would have to go through the process if it was determined that, go through the plan, the Historic Preservation Committee. And
Well, it's interesting. It wouldn't. It would just be a CEQA process because until when the city updates its historic survey, I think it's budgeted to happen, actually. It's only covered residential properties. So, and then the whole the preservation ordinance is depending on what you're graded in the historic resource survey. It had an A, B, C, D, kind of rating. And if you were A or B, you were subject to the preservation ordinance. But again, it was that was only residential property. So none of those properties on the corridor, we would look, but they're probably not there because they only did the residentially zoned areas. So it wouldn't be subject to the Preservation Commission review and a certificate of appropriateness and all the preservation ordinance requirements, but it'd be subject to mitigation that would be determined in a cultural resources report, historic resources report for that property, and it'd be evaluated, and then probably it's going to get demoed, to be honest, and for some new development, and there's Department of Interior standards for documentation of any, significance. They would have to do, that we'd put them through the same process essentially as we do for the, per the preservation ordinance. It's just, we wouldn't be going through the Historic Preservation Commission and actually formally applying the ordinance.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Could you give us an example of how so part of what we're being asked for approval on tonight is a change that, and I assume this is a change, is that developments over 15,000 square foot would would create public
Yeah.
open space. Could you give us an example of what that would be?
Yeah, I mean, it's a small scale, but we have it now. For example, I want to say Seabreeze or One South, and it's basically a plaza, a small plaza that's open, that the sidewalk kind of extends back, and it has to have a minimum dimension of 10 feet. They're just small spaces. Legato's going to have kind of a linear, usable public open space as well as a large plaza that'll be open to the public. So it depends on the size of the project, but they're usually, right adjacent. There are areas we carve out adjacent to the sidewalk and then create, some usable public space, just some chairs, some landscaping, fountain. It's not, maybe get some public art there. That's what One South did. They have a big art piece on the side of their wall as this big area opens up. Then that could be something that we get, especially on the corridor. There's a lot of monies that are been dedicated for public art. So I think that there's implementation actions in the ACAP about, really energizing the public art elements along the corridor. And then we'd be working those into the new development projects and adding that to what we would try to, as much as we could carve out for usable public open space. So it's just kind of a additional open space on the front end of the new commercial development.
Okay, thank you.
To tag on to that,
Yeah, go ahead.
is there an existing project, like, for example, the Great Room? That's a pretty big, I don't know if it's 15,000 square feet.
Yeah.
But what might that look like differently if, let's say, it was 15,000 square feet?
Yeah.
How would this new requirement make that look different?
It would be, we'd look at the FAR, the existing square footage, and we'd take 10%, and we'd have a finite space that would have to be worked into the, adjacent to the right of way and the public space. And it would just create a sitting space,
Like a little parkette or something.
yeah, a little like parklet
Maybe like out
type
at the
thing.
corner of the parking lot or something
Yeah,
like
exactly.
But would it allow them to have outdoor dining? Would it?
It could play off of that. We try
that.
to.
And they do at the Great Room, actually.
Do they?
Yeah.
Yeah, we try to open it up.
Does this open space become larger as the space is larger beyond 15,000 square feet?
Yes.
Is it, you mentioned 10%, is it
Yeah, it's
whatever their square footage is, they would need to dedicate 10% to usable public
correct.
space, which means it would have to be on the ground floor,
Yes.
ground level?
Yes. It's got to be accessible. There's a lot of criteria.
Accessible to the sidewalk.
Yeah, accessible to the public and, minimum dimensions. And so it's,
You don't have to cut through the building to get to it?
no. Yeah, shouldn't.
Yeah. Or raise the building up and that's the entire ground level.
There's that. Yeah, there's that. Yeah.
Oh,
Put it on podium
Yeah,
development.
there you go, put everything on
The constraint?
stilts.
Yes.
Do you have a follow-up you want to ask?
A
about?
question, just a quick question on it. It seems to me like that isn't a constraint. We're talking about CUPs being a constraint. That seems to be, if we're talking about something like the Great Room,
Right.
it might be, a constraint.
Yeah. Well,
What are your thoughts?
well, there is an out. If it's a project on 20,000 square feet or less, they can come to the planning commission and get that reduced.
if the planning commission agrees with their argument.
Well, if it's a new building, it would be before you anyway through design.
Yeah, right. But if they weren't, so if, let's say it didn't have to come to you for, I can't think of something that would probably need, new, that would trigger that requirement, not having a planning commission design review, but let's say it didn't. If they didn't want to provide that 10%, they'd have to come here and ask this body for some relief.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Hensley.
Yeah. It's funny, one of our commission referrals is a discussion on open space for mixed use and other such things. So I'm going to use this time to give my opinions. The requirement for mixed use, I think, is a little bit too broad in that it incorporates sidewalks or parkways or other required medians, like, because I think the language is or other public spaces, which is almost anything. So I don't like that part of it for mixed use, and I have the same worries for this application. I can't see any 15,000 square foot lot on Artesia or Aviation, because even Grub House at 10,000 was like one of the bigger lots. So
Right.
I just don't see it being any sort of constraint. Yeah, so, but I have in general issues with the way it's applied. So, yeah, indifferent about that. One question I had, one of the bullet points here is about the bullet point 2, future projects be consistent with the ACAP. I feel like we just went through like years of residential design guidelines and subjective requirements, and then all throughout the document, the requirements are consistent with, align with council adopted, align with this. Isn't this the same thing in the commercial space? Like, they're going to say it's consistent, staff's going to say it's not consistent.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't it make more sense to say objectify it, like meet 8 policy alignments, or like
I don't disagree. I mean, the difference is, oh, wow.
generator?
Leaf blower,
What is that?
call the police.
That was, sounds like a leaf. The difference is the state doesn't have any authority, at least yet, on commercial development and making us make everything objective. And I think in the commercial environment, discretion is, it's entrenched in what we do, and we need some latitude to work with the developer, the applicant, and I think, trying to crystal ball the exact standard and design it is, I don't think it's going to work out. We're going to sell ourselves short in some circumstances. With the commercial development, you've got the architects, the engineers, and you can then really get some creative development that I think we'd be better served with having discretion instead of trying to figure out what we want on every commercial lot.
Okay. Back to the zoning changes, when I went through GPAC and before, didn't they propose to basically, like, right now we have like C1, C2, C3, C4, C5. Didn't they propose to like eliminate all that and just do commercial? And this is the FAR of commercial, but it looks like we're still keeping C2 and C2 pedestrian. And maybe can you explain that to me a little bit?
Yeah,
what's going on there?
Yeah, we went through quite a process at GPAC to try to simplify the zoning categories, and but then when we, the narrative that went with it, when it got to council, they were like, well, they were just the very simple definitions that go with all those categories. They just felt more comfortable with, and they just said, let's just go back to that.
See you later. Okay.
Yeah.
Goodness, we spent years doing
Yeah, that's where ideas go to die. Okay, so that was all kiboshed, and we're back to, because not the problem, but like, and not so much maybe on Artesian Aviation, it's mostly C2 and C2 pedestrian, right?
Yes, yeah, that's all we have
just
there. We got
general-
some C4 on the very end.
Okay, but just a general comment that like C1, this is the FAR and this is the use, and C2, this is the FAR and this is the use, and
we don't
it was
really
just
have
so
that here.
minusculely different between commercial zones. So, okay, that's that. And then just to confirm what I heard earlier tonight, when we're talking about the changing the floor area ratio from 0.5 to 0.6 in the C2 and C2 pedestrian, That's only on Artesia and Aviation, right? This isn't proposing to do that everywhere throughout the city?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, that's that. Oh, last thing. Commissioner Lamb had brought up the level of service and the traffic studies, and you mentioned some numbers. I looked in the environmental report and in the staff report. I don't see any traffic or study or level of service. Is that?
Yeah,
Did I miss it, or could you maybe point me to where I could?
Well,
see?
no, we didn't do any of that. That's not it didn't cross any of we've got two thresholds. There's CEQA thresholds, and we didn't come anywhere near those. And then there's Article 27, which is outside of CEQA.
Yep.
So we don't have any Article 27 analysis in the CEQA document.
Is there Article 27 analysis anywhere?
Yes.
You walk through like this is the trap generation and this is our assumption and some numbers, but is that in any?
No, it was anecdotal. We didn't really have we have the methodology, we have that attached to that. It didn't incorporate the traffic methodology, but it does, it does confirm the build out of square footage.
Yeah, it was more of a staff exercise just to make sure Article 27 wasn't tripped, and we were pursuing the right vehicle to get this processed and potentially approved.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah, please.
Just to tag on to that, there could be an analysis. Is that correct? An additional analysis could be done to validate the anecdotal. Is that correct?
Yeah, and again, I think it's pretty clearly spelled out in terms of the square footage, that analysis.
Yes.
But for the traffic, there could be some additional work. We felt confident based on, all the conversations and the meetings with Public Works and traffic consultants. So,
right.
But we don't have a memorandum at this point.
But that could be a recommendation that we could make to the council that they consider.
Yes.
Right, to confirm the anecdotal data information that you have.
Okay. Yes.
Right? We can do that.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Please.
Okay. I'll just offer my opinions on some of the other bullet points if that's what was asked of us.
Okay.
I think the outdoor dining, amend the CUP, I think over 150 square feet, I'm okay with that, but maybe I would propose to put an upper cap on it, like 500 square feet or some like kind of really big outdoor dining. Maybe it should be still CUP, but smaller stuff, not. Again, these are my personal opinions. Same for restaurants. I don't see why any restaurant in the city above 2,000 square feet needs a CUP. I find that whole process burdensome because a restaurant at 1,999 square feet does not, and at 2,001 square feet, suddenly they need a CUP, and I don't see any big significant difference. Now, again, you get up to 5,000 square feet or something really big, maybe a CUP is warranted. Those are my two thoughts on those two kind of bigger areas, I think, at this time. So that's it. Thank you.
You want to keep going?
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. Yeah, office ground floor is fine. A-frame signs fine. Access, I like that. And again, my comment on the access between commercial and residential was just shouldn't be 4 units and above, should be any residential project. Outdoor retail displays, fine. And again, public open space, I don't see it ever happening. So as proposed, I think is okay, but I do have other concerns with the general mixed use public open space requirement and its application. Yeah, there's my rundown of bullet points. But in general, there's just a lot that exists here, and we haven't even talked about specific code changes or language or other kinds of things. So, like, I'm leaning or looking for a little more time to digest and go through and read and before this whole thing. That I can give opinions on these points, but just overall in general, not fully digested everything. If I could put that gently. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hensley.
Close the public hearing?
I mean, if we're all done, do we have any public comments?
We do not have any additional comments.
Sean, I have a motion about the
Yes.
presentation.
I'm sorry?
I have a motion about, can I make a motion to receive and file the staff presentation? Because it's different, new.
Second that?
Okay.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those against, say no. Passes unanimously. Do we have any other comments on this or questions for staff? Yes, Commissioner Boswell.
Our one, I guess that was a written comment that came in. Two things are still stuck in my mind. One was widening sidewalks and the other was bike corrals. Is it even possible to widen these sidewalks? I mean, short of moving the buildings back, we can't make Artesia any narrower. Is that even a realistic?
Yeah, I mean, it technically is with that width right of way. They've looked at, all sorts of configurations, skinning it up, really skinnying up that median. There's actually some tightening of the lanes. Surprisingly, there is, with that width right of way, there are multiple options for actually widening the sidewalk.
GPAC looked at a lot of different configurations for that.
Yes.
So eliminating essentially the center divide or narrowing it down extremely, adding, we looked at bike lanes, the parking bike lanes, and then narrowing it down to just one lane in each direction. Yeah. Also 2 lanes in each direction, but bike lanes on the sides. I mean, we looked at
parking.
Yeah, no parking.
Right.
I mean, we looked at a lot of different combinations.
So renderings of how this would work, and none of them look that good. and frankly, the median is the best looking thing on all of Artesia is the median.
It's matured well.
Until we get the grub house in,
yeah,
then it won't matter. Narrowing that, or not having bike lanes on Artesia, put them on the parallel streets.
Right, and that was an option as well.
Because widening those sidewalks changes everything, I would think, as far as having more outdoor stuff.
It does. I mean, that's a whole nother discussion
restaurants
and
in,
effort. But
in Hermosa on Pier, where there is what appears to be outdoor dining, but it's actually that they've moved their exterior wall in. It's still covered, but it's now an open space to Pier, and there's seating for a dozen or more people, 15 people maybe, that they call outside dining, and then there's the indoor dining behind that, and there's small places. That kind of change to the front wall of businesses might be what it takes to make this outdoor dining happen at all of the ground floor restaurants.
No, that's true.
I'd like to see that, yeah.
Well, we have some good experiments. Look at Hermosa Avenue right around Pier Avenue, where all the outdoor dining is, and they took away a lane of Hermosa Avenue, and the world just adapted to it,
Mm-hmm.
Not the residents. They don't.
Yeah. Yeah, taking away lanes, I'm not sure if that's the best. Because we don't want a traffic jam moving through Artesia, because it's always going to be a commuter thoroughfare. Unless we funnel them over to Grant and put that back to 2 lanes each way. And I know all those people living on Grant are not going to like that idea.
Yeah.
But how else are they going to go east and west? They got to go on Artesia.
Yeah.
So taking a lane away, I don't know if that's a good idea, but giving up the median.
Well, luckily, we're not voting on that tonight.
No, we're not solving that tonight, that's for sure.
But then to try to squeeze bike lanes in there, widen side, it's just,
One thing at a
we
time.
need narrower people. That's the truth.
Commissioner Lamb.
A couple of things. One is.
Sorry. Bike corrals. Would restaurants be the place to have a bike corral? Is it And then how would that work? That's more stuff on the sidewalk then, or does it get a space on the, like take a parking space off the street for a bike corral? What are we envisioning as far as bike corrals?
Yeah,
on
I
Artesia?
don't think that's not part of our parking. It's in the ACAP, bike requirements, bike parking. It's
Just
not
bike
part of
racks?
what we're looking at tonight. It's more of a mobility issue. We're kind of focusing on the placemaking aspect of ACAP, but it's all this stuff, all these, and that's the beauty of the ACAP, really. And by the way, we've not mentioned that it's an award-winning plan.
Yes.
It was given
All
a
right, that's
special
what that
award.
thing is.
Oh, there it is.
There it is.
There's the award.
It's for what?
Who gave that to you,
The
Greg?
American Planning Association, the Los Angeles chapter for innovation and economic development.
Very
All
nice.
right.
Very nice.
So,
Good
yeah,
job,
no,
you guys.
For doing what exactly?
For the ACAP,
Oh, it's the ACAP.
adoption of the ACAP. Yeah.
yeah, it's a pretty unique
But I guess
plan.
we're stuck with it.
Yeah.
Well, it is your
We're not
vision.
giving that back.
Commissioner Lamb.
A couple of things here. First, I want to thank you for identifying the implementation table in this document or in the presentation. That's really helpful. I noticed in some of the information from the council, they asked for a linear timeline, or I think a priority list. Is that something that you are, this is my first question, is that something that you're considering that moving forward, is that you'll have a sort of idea about where the priorities, the priority is? And I know that we've talked about, Greg, you mentioned traffic, right? Or parking. I think it was parking,
Right.
right? So is there, is that in the works by any chance?
So right now, we're reacting to council direction via the strategic plan the last year and a half or so.
Yeah.
These items being one, the parking being the next one. There's also the exploration of the rooftop dining. That's a new addition to the strategic plan. And then even more so, there is that general kind of review of increasing FAR from 0.6 to 1.5. That is such a substantial change that it's actually being rolled into the general plan amendment GPAC analysis. So we are juggling a few council priorities right now. We don't have a list per se of beyond that, what's 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th. I'm sure once we start knocking some of these off, council will probably ask for a prioritization list, and then they can start directing us as much to keep going with this implementation.
Okay, that's helpful. We're going to be looking to you, Greg, and I think it's Dave, really to get out there and find some really innovative restaurants for our Artesia Boulevard. You've got the roadmap, right?
We do.
You've got the roadmap, the timeline. So we're really counting on you to do that. And I think that's it for this moment. There was one more, but I forgot.
All right. Any other questions from members of the commission? All right. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing.
I second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those against, say no. Okay, as we've closed the public hearing. I assume there were no other public comments that we were missing, right?
No.
All right.
No other public comments.
Okay.
Can we get that list back up again that you guys wanted us to address? Where did that go?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, maybe take it. I'm sorry, we were conversing. What I was asking Greg to do was, he's got the resolutions. If there's some language you want to look at specifically.
Okay.
The other slide we had up, was kind of I appreciate Commissioner Hensley's comments. I'm okay with, this and I'm okay with that. If there's, consensus, those are items that are within the resolutions that we don't need to spend much time on. If there's items that you need to kind of wordsmith a little, or you think there's a little more you want to try to do with it, that's when we could, have that item up, and then we could take some notes and craft a companion recommendation if there's some edits that you'd like to make.
And maybe to make this a little bit easier, we've got this list right here in front of you. It might be worth taking a straw poll and just, getting rid of the stuff that you all agree on already, so that we can focus on maybe some of the more meatier subjects.
Sounds good.
Any specific objections?
Let's just start from the top then, huh?
Sure.
Okay.
Everybody okay with the 0.5 to 0.6?
Yes.
Yep.
Shall we?
Future projects consistent with the ACAP. Yes?
Awesome.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes?
Can we go down to allow office on ground floor?
But wait. Let's
Well,
go in
let's go back
sequence.
to that because that's going to take longer, isn't it?
What?
Oh, we're going to.
Amend.
2 and
We're
3.
just straw polling. That's all we're doing.
Okay.
Just seeing if there are anything should be opened up for
How
further
about as
scrutiny.
is? So like no changes, no amendments.
Yeah,
just
that's
as
all we're
is.
sort of,
Okay.
that's right. The thumbs up
Thumbs up or
means no
thumb down.
changes, right?
Right.
Okay, so the third one, amend the CUP requirement for outdoor dining areas over 150 square feet to AUP requirement, still required to comply with outdoor dining and AUP criteria. Are we thumbs up or do we have some objection? Huh?
Is it thumbs down? Is that thumbs
We
down?
have, that's what I was going to say.
No,
We have a
we'll
little-
come back to it.
Okay, well, right
This
now
is
I'm
a
a
qu-
thumbs down.
okay.
I need more discussion.
Okay, and I
Thumbs down.
okay. So the third one we're going to come back to. Fourth one, amend CUP requirement for restaurants over 2,000 square feet with no drive-through to AUP requirement.
I'm a thumbs down on that.
Okay, we've got some thumbs. We've got some
I'm assuming
thumbs
this is a
down.
consent calendar. If one person-
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Allow office on ground floor.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up?
Thumbs
Are we
up.
all thumbs up? Okay, good. So allow A-frame signs. Thumbs up, thumbs up. Any thumbs down? Oh, we have a thumbs down. Okay. So we'll come back to A-frame signs. Allow pedestrian bicycle access between adjacent commercial and residential properties. Thumbs up. Oh, we have a thumbs down over here. Okay, so we're gonna have to come back to that. Allow outdoor retail displays. All thumbs up? All thumbs up?
Thumbs up.
Okay, we're all
I'm not
thumbs.
sure what that is.
Um,
Down at the Riviera Village, where they have like the cart for sale, or not cart, the clothes hanging outside and the sale rack and the
Exactly.
table with the shoes and
Exactly.
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Third world
think-
market.
No,
bizarre.
think Spider
not.
in Hermosa Beach out on the,
It's
where
just
they put a
enough to
rack
get you to
out and
go
there's
in.
something on it.
Yeah. And they have to get it approved by the planning department.
So
Yeah,
each retail
Manhattan
store
has
that
that.
wants to put racks out on the sidewalk
yeah.
would need to get it approved. And if we still have those narrow sidewalks, how could they be approved?
They're so tiny
Well,
that
look
they're
at-
like,
they're
I
gonna
think
be
we got
this
the
wide
thumbs
at
down.
least.
We
Right
were
now, they're
talking
not
about-
allowed at all. Is that you want them to continue to not be allowed at all? That's a thumbs down. We'll come
I
back
don't
to
know.
it.
I don't
Okay,
know.
so require usable public open space, 10% of FAR on lots over 15,000 square feet. Are we all thumbs up on that?
Yeah.
It's a great idea. I just don't think it's.
Okay,
Yeah, it's
all
not gonna
thumbs
happen.
up. So we're done with that one. Okay.
Issue.
So I think we're at, we've got the third one we've got to look at first. Amend the CUP requirement for outdoor dining areas over 150 square feet to AUP requirements. Still has to comply with outdoor dining and AUP criteria.
So
Who was against that?
Me.
Ah,
I think I need an example from you guys. Let's have an example of 100 square foot outdoor dining where it's not going to come in front of us. So
Oh, yeah,
What
Great
are you-
Room, Great Room is an excellent example of that.
Yeah, but I don't, great room, why?
Great Room has an outdoor dining. They're right on Artesia, and they have outdoor dining.
parking lot?
Artesia and, but behind the, okay,
Kingsdale.
behind the.
Kingsdale and Artesia. They're at the
Okay,
corner
that's
of
good, that's good,
Kingsdale
you're
and
good.
Right
Artesia.
behind them all. Okay, yeah,
But
okay.
the coffee shop, the honey
Right.
and bear, honey and whatever that place
Not
is.
a
No,
Thank
great,
you.
the Great Room.
That place, that was 200, that was outdoor dining among other things,
And
or
it's
outdoor
tiny,
seating.
it's a small space,
Yeah,
100
but
150 feet.
But all the conditions and all the things they're still required, like hours and noise and mitigation and whatever, and number of seats and all that's still required. But at 150 square feet, currently it's required to come to us. But
So
this
we're
would,
saying if it's
Just for outdoor
150
dining.
or
For outdoor dining.
less, don't worry about it. Or 150 or greater than 150.
150 and below, right?
Okay, I'm for
Sorry,
that.
so
then. Okay.
let me confirm. Outdoor dining,
Oh, we can't talk to them anymore.
Outdoor dining has specific criteria. You were
yeah,
mentioning it, and permits are required for any outdoor dining.
okay, so
Up to, it's an AUP up to 150 square feet, and then above that, it's a CUP.
but this says that areas greater than 150 square feet shall be subject to AUP.
Yes. So we're gonna allow the AUP,
Forever.
Yeah.
And below 150, nothing is required?
no, it's still required.
AUP.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so
So it's just AUP for outdoor dining.
got it. So I think 150 is a reasonable space, but I would be open to a upper limit on what that is.
Okay.
Okay.
So, and just throwing out a number for discussion, I think 500 square feet is a big outdoor dining space. And like, I would propose some sort of cap around there that says up to 500 AUP. Do
I
as you
think-
please, above 500, more potential for noise, more potential for impacts, still requires CUP.
I think that's a great idea. I like that.
I have no strong feeling for 500, so 400, 750, I don't know the threshold.
150 sounds pretty cute.
Yeah, 10
Anything
by
else,
15,
we
that's how
probably
I
need to,
think of it, yeah.
yeah, I'm for that.
So these would be attached as sort of,
Companion,
all right, okay, yeah,
Document.
companion
Wouldn't
document
not
saying,
block-
we recommend this.
Because right here, we're on this section 10.22507. You wouldn't just not mark that out.
We wouldn't change it before we go to council, but what we would do is provide them with a list of recommended changes that you guys at least have a 4-2
Right.
vote on.
So
Okay.
could you explain, because normally Brandy would be changing the writing on our resolution.
yeah,
That we're approving it. These are the actual zone amendments that
Okay,
they're
okay,
proposing.
okay.
You're the
I
approving body,
understand.
that's the case. When you're a recommendation body, we just kind of.
Okay, I understand now. Okay,
that's the
thank you.
difference.
So that would be, I think that's a great recommendation. On the bigger ones, getting our input would be a good idea.
But is 500 the right number? Is 750 the right number?
So 500 is,
22 by 22. 20 by 20 is 400 square feet, so.
Yeah, I'm having trouble picturing what these different.
I think that's probably a good size, actually, Matthew,
50.
because the great room you're talking about is relatively small, right?
It's probably the parking lot's much bigger
No,
than.
but the.
Yeah, no,
patio
there's an
area-
outdoor dining area, but it's got
it's
maybe
small.
two
Yeah,
tables.
yeah.
I mean, it's very small,
Okay.
but
But even in their whole parking lot, I'm not sure
The
that.
patio part? You're talking about that
Nice.
patio section? You're not talking about the parking lot, COVID
in
dining?
general, no, they have a small outdoor dining area with
One right by the
tables and
door.
glass
Yeah,
wall
okay.
around it.
Yeah, it's a little
Yeah.
patio. Okay, yeah, that's very small.
It is. But he's asking the question, what's the upper limit on this before it needs a CUP, right?
Yeah.
And so is it 500? Is it 750? My preference is to bump it up because even though we're worried about neighborhood impacts, I mean, this is Artesia Boulevard. I mean,
Wanna
they have an
incentivize.
ambient noise level.
I think he's worried about impacts. You're worried about incentivization.
No limit?
Pardon me?
No limit then on outdoor dining?
I don't know what the right limit is. I'm hesitant to put a limit on it. Again, for Artesia Boulevard, in my opinion, we really need to do something to encourage businesses like the Grub House to invest the time and money into
But the
bringing it
Grindhouse
up.
was a perfect example where they came in front of us in a very short time. I think we need, like, for example, asking that they plant trees between well, it's a new thing, so it would still come in front of us,
So the
right?
design would come
Yeah.
So
before.
that's just it.
That would be,
Right.
Still be
That's
able to
right.
ask for
Yeah,
the
again,
trees.
this is something moving into like the old beauty shop or the
Right.
old mattress.
Chinese restaurant moving into the old beauty shop,
Yeah,
okay.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
you want that to happen quickly.
Yes.
Okay, I'm fine with that then.
So no limit?
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Okay, how do you guys feel about that?
Outdoor seating.
As far as I'm concerned, throwing a limit on this is, I mean, I don't want to create more red tape for these businesses. I really want this.
So if there's no limit specified, when they come to you with their plan, you might say, well, that's way too much, right? And
I mean-
say, scale it back. You would take that role that we would normally have.
Yeah, we'd be looking how close they are to the adjacent residents.
ADA accessibility,
Yeah.
right?
Look at all the same things. we would be
Yeah,
looking at.
how's your lighting, what's your buffer between the
If you
residents?
denied
Would we,
aspect of their outdoor dining, then they would want to appeal, then it would come to us.
that's exactly right.
Okay, so if you can't convince them to right-size their outdoor dining,
It's coming here.
then it comes here and we'll
Let me ask a
Take care of
process question. If there's a AUP and it gets built and installed and some resident behind it complains and they say that it's too bright, too loud, too whatever, does that AUP can it be appealed or does that come to the planning commission if there's some disagreement or interpretation or
There's
some?
a notification process for the AUP, so we notify adjacent properties within 100 feet. And then if they submit something, we have like a hearing.
Mhm.
And if, at staff level with them. And if we can't work it out, we can end up here.
Well, but I'm saying like.
Before we even approve it.
But I'm saying after AUP is approved, after it's built,
Yeah.
everyone's good until it actually gets built and there's some noise complaint.
Yeah, then it's code enforcement.
Okay, so then it would never come back to us. It would never be adjudicated.
I'm not sure if there's a.
Sometimes one of the conditions is like any disagreement of this, this CUP
and that,
is
I'd
back
have to
the planning
look at an
commission.
AUP condition. That's probably something we would put on there.
Okay.
We typically do. There is always kind of an escalator.
Yeah.
So do we want to add that as a recommendation then? That they put that in there?
So the neighborhood notification that they get that we're going to hear it is the same notification they're going to get if it's the staff is.
Yeah, I'm good with that process. I don't
It's after the fact.
I'm thinking after the fact. So, yeah, maybe that's the recommendation.
We have the authority to revoke that AUP.
You know what I keep thinking about though through all of this is like, Pier Avenue, Lower Pier Avenue. All that change went in, like, did it go through the planning department? I mean, the planning commission probably, and the residents don't like it because it's very noisy. It's party time all the time. What if that happens and we're like, oops, we gave up our role?
Yeah, I lived.
And those are all outdoor patios.
Yeah, I lived a block away from that in Hermosa when
It was
all of
bad,
that occurred.
right?
It's a long story. There were a lot of dynamics going on there.
It's bad.
I don't think anybody would.
busy.
They have the option to change that back. That they actually have parking spaces drawn in there. And when they first designed it, you could have cars coming in to park in there. It is not by default an open plaza with no
Well,
cars
no,
on
we
it.
used to go there when it was a street. So no,
Right.
it is a street.
It is a
But what
street.
I'm saying is that it changed to a plaza.
Right.
And the people that live around there, it's too noisy for them. What if we get this situation where we gave up all of our, we gave up, oh, sorry, you guys, it kind of turned into party animals down there. I mean, that's part of the problem.
Well, yeah, and this is not that extreme, but remember they did that willingly. They're
It is all the
It was
outdoor
by
dining
design.
though. Every
it was
restaurant
it
has
was by
outdoor dining.
design. The public, that's what they wanted. Truly, yeah, it was.
Sorry, back to the recommendations. Yeah, I used to live in Hermosa too, but it's funny. I just think of arguments between all the young people and the old people. Sorry, back to our
Now we're the
recommendations.
old people.
Yeah, now we're the old people.
What happened in Hermosa? All the fun people moved in and decided to stay, and now they've all got kids and whatever. And they're like, this party seems
Now, wait a
gotta
minute.
go. I'm over it now.
So maybe our recommendation to council is consider an upper limit. That's for them to decide. And number two, consider an AUP to have a condition that if there's any disagreement or conflict or unsuccessful code enforcement mitigations, that it's then referred to the planning commission.
That sounds good.
That sounds great.
Anybody okay
So
with
an
that?
upper limit of, let's say, 500 square feet, any upper limit over the 500 square feet would come to the.
No, not
No,
500.
so I propose no upper limit based on what I heard. So no upper limit, but the recommendation is council is consider something.
We're still
Okay,
on the
so-
outdoor patio, right?
Yeah, outdoor.
Yeah.
Okay, so greater than 150 feet shall be subject to the approval of the administrative use permit.
Right.
Period,
That's it.
right?
But they should consider an upper limit.
Limit, if they so choose. If that,
Right. But we're not recommending an upper limit. We're not
Just a number.
advocating
A
an
number.
upper limit.
You don't have
because
a
I can't
number,
think of
but
a
think,
good
do
justification.
you
Yeah.
want,
And
yeah.
are you
yeah.
writing that down?
Yes.
Yeah, so that-
Hold on, then we're gonna compare notes.
Because we're not.
Okay, so
That was one, and then two was
Outdoor dining.
in an AUP, a condition that if there's any unsuccessful code enforcement mitigation or
If determined a
Excessive.
nuisance,
Yeah.
refer to planning commission.
referred to planning for additional conditions or something, or I don't know,
Okay.
some other language like that. But
Yeah.
okay, how do we feel about that?
I
Thumbs
like
up?
it,
Do we all
yeah.
have thumbs up?
Yeah.
We're all thumbs
All
up.
right.
Good.
Good
Next.
Nice.
What's our next bullet
It was
point?
the other
That was
CUP one.
Oh,
open.
sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so our next
Amend
one.
CUP requirement for restaurants greater than 2,000 square feet with no drive-through. Okay, I need a little bit.
So again, restaurants under 2,000 square feet are permitted by right currently. This would be an adjustment to allow them by right when they're over 2,000 square feet.
And Grubhub was 5,000 square feet.
10.
10,000 square
But
feet.
that was also a new building and would have been before you
same
anyway.
review.
Right.
Oh, that's
So-
right, it would come in
Yeah.
front of me.
Yeah.
So we're talking about existing. we're
Existing
talking
structures.
Existing structures.
Really, that's what you're looking at.
Existing 2,200 square feet restaurant says, I want to open in this existing structure, make no changes to it. I want to move in tomorrow and open my restaurant. Today, they would have to come and get a CUP for that restaurant in that existing space.
Correct.
And after
let's
this,
just
they
let
can just
them
do
do
it.
it.
Right.
That-
Okay.
Yeah.
That, you might ask yourself why you've never seen any.
Oh, I've seen.
The CUPs for
Existing.
restaurants like that?
Well, over 2,000 I've seen.
Well, we
Have we
did
seen
have a
it?
little
Yeah, like-
bakery come in front of us.
On PCH Pizza Shop or something, they went from literally from 1,900 square feet to 2,150 square feet, and they had to come for a
It's-
CUP.
A lot of times, you would see
Yeah,
that a lot of them just go away after we tell them that requirement.
yeah.
They-
So
they
I've
don't do it.
seen.
That's why you don't see
Yeah,
more.
yeah, but even the ones I have seen, there's just nothing.
Yeah,
I'm looking at 1986 CUPs with no conditions. Like
It
I
wasn't
know.
doing-
it was. It's not worth. It was not worth the planning commission's time to look at that. But number 4 bullet point about restaurants, I'm more insistent that there's some upper limit. Because I can worry that a 5,000 square foot restaurant or 7,000 square foot restaurant or some very, very large size
Okay,
could,
greater than, so then we would want,
yeah.
consider upper
Recommendation.
Do
limit.
we have I mean, what's a good example of a structure that size? Are we talking about the Goodwill or the,
Have existing structures on Artesia or Aviation that are 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 square feet?
turning the big lots
Most
into a
of-
restaurant?
Big lots.
Yeah, that's. I
Or are
don't-
they mostly strip mall and
Big
2,000?
lots, chop shop.
It's, the
Yes.
small, narrow strip, storefront, next to storefront, those are in the 1,500 to 2,000 range. And then, everything else is a little bit bigger.
What about the Denny's?
The Denny's, that's probably about 5,000.
5,000.
That's
Yeah.
5,000.
Yeah,
It's already a restaurant. But yeah,
4 to 5.
so
yeah, so if it's a bigger one, it probably should come in front of us. I think
Yeah,
that's a
so
good idea.
let me confirm. So the Denny's is closed, right? On
It is closed.
Aviation and
Yes.
Artesia.
And Yeah.
another restaurant wanted to come there and move into that space and change some of the facade or the look of it so it doesn't look like Denny's anymore, is that administrative design review, or is that just moving into the existing space?
We would probably, we.
So no addition, no.
If it hasn't been closed for 2 years, we would preserve the legal nonconforming privilege of that space, of that building. So it would allow, something just like it, another restaurant could move in without any conditional use permit. But we're getting close to 2 years on that. And so the next guy who moves in, or restaurant that wants to go in there, is probably going to be coming here.
Okay. So
the way it's written now.
Yeah.
And the proposal is to eliminate that so that they wouldn't have to come.
They have to get an administrative
AUP.
use permit, but not a CUP.
So everybody needs the AUP, no matter what.
No, it's only the 2,000 and greater than 2,000. Before, as Greg said, it's permitted by right under 2,000, but now it'll go, at least as proposed, greater than 2,000, an AUP only,
I would put,
But not a CUP.
instead of a CUP.
So it wouldn't come in front of
So
a.
under
And this is
2,000
just in the
square
plan
feet
area.
Doesn't need anything.
Currently, it doesn't need it.
Current needs,
But
This is
over
just on
that,
the
it would
corners
only
right
need
there.
an AUP, no longer a CUP. But at some point, like around 5 or 6 or 7,000 square feet, it might be.
yeah, they might, they're,
So you guys, yeah.
yeah, that's what you guys are trying to figure out.
I think that's a good idea.
Put in
and
a
this
rule.
is just in the plan area. This is
Correct,
not a
just the
crushed
That's the plan
plan
area.
area.
Right,
Right.
that's all we're dealing with here.
Yeah,
Right,
I get that.
right.
So having no better information, I would propose the upper limit of 5,000, knowing that it's not frequent on the corridor. It's exceptionally large for that space and has potential for more impacts. I would propose above 5,000 square feet still require a CUP.
I agree
Can we
with that.
specify anything bigger than the Denny's?
5,000 sounds good because
Oh, that's funny.
Except for Denny's.
that's a big investment for somebody, so having a little bit of a delay and coming from in front of us is not really a big deal.
Yeah,
I mean,
Okay,
hopefully
so-
your guys can move it through quicker.
With Matt's proviso, do we have a thumbs up on this?
On
Thumbs up? We have all thumbs up.
consider a
Good.
500.
There you go.
5,000.
5,000.
5,000,
All
I
right.
mean.
What's next? We're gonna nail these one by one.
Yeah,
A-frame
A-frame.
signs.
Yeah.
What do
We
you
were
have?
five
against
ones.
This is
A-
greater than
So-
500.
sounds
right?
nice.
I put thumbs down too.
Greater than
I
5,000.
put thumbs
Thumbs
down
down.
too.
Oh, really? You don't like the A-frame
No, so
signs?
A-frames are fine, but I would allow A-frame signs and strongly consider increasing the sidewalk width to make it more pedestrian friendly. Like,
Well, that is in the ACAP. It's just
Yeah.
not.
well,
what
but
we're dealing with
as
right now.
proposed, the sidewalks aren't changing because right now we just have a picture, and we're going to allow A-frame signs as soon as this is implemented.
Well, but with review of the planning department to make sure it fits and there's any
if it's going to go in
accessibility.
the
and
right of way, it's got to be
When you widen the
engineering.
sidewalk, it's just going to increase the number of properties that would get approved by planning. That's the difference.
So
And
the
again,
department is still, it's not by right that they can put up the sign. They still have to go through
Yeah.
They-
the
yeah.
planning
Yes.
department to put up the sign.
Let's say that somebody wants to, what we see a lot in Riviera might be a chalk A-frame that'll have their menu specials for
Yeah.
the day. That's considered an A-frame sign.
Yes.
Those are generally really small, Matthew, so
Yeah.
it's not like, they're big old huge honking
You
things.
you
They're
need to
really
talk,
small.
he's the one against
But they-
A-frame
but-
signs.
I
No,
I
Matt
don't see
said
that
anything
too.
limiting
Well,
the size of A-frame signs. I
They're
don't see
really,
anything
yeah, but
limiting it.
Well,
they're
the planning
not-
department looks at the sign sizes, signs and
And
stuff
tells
like
them
that.
where they
It's
can
not
put
like they
them.
automatically can put them up, right?
No, they're right. But there's no guidelines on what qualifies as an A-frame as opposed to a roadblock.
But there is, right?
Yeah,
There's somebody we're going to trust in the planning department and you.
And engineering.
So
These are,
entirely up to you.
correct. Yeah.
these are engineers looking
and
at
yet-
this.
Yeah,
right?
and they
No
require a
matter
certain
how
width.
wide the sidewalk is, an A-frame takes away from that, whereas a shingle hanging down, the blade sign, I guess.
But those are
doesn't.
allowed too,
And they
right?
can do that now. can
And
do
so
that.
what,
So we don't need
so
to
they can
make any
accomplish the
adjustment.
same kind of
It's just, you don't
signage.
usually see a menu hanging from the
Yeah,
ceiling.
a chalkboard menu.
But the point was being made that a lot of times you can't tell what's in that location unless you're on the other side of the
Yeah,
street.
right.
This would solve that issue.
Well, there's other
Hang
benefits
down
too.
Signs.
Yeah.
And if somebody is walking down Artesian, they see XYZ restaurant, they go, oh, restaurant.
Yeah.
And they stop and they look at the menu in the window. There's no way, there's plenty of ways to get around the obstructions on these sidewalks.
They really truly aren't an obstruction. That's what like walking around Riviera, which I do a lot. I never have to go around them. And because they're, even with like, let's say somebody puts out 5 pairs of shoes as a display, they're always kept close. A little sign saying sale on shoes today.
Yeah, until they're not.
You're not having to, trust me, and I've always got people and dogs and we're not tripping. So it's.
I think to Commissioner Boswell's point, and my point is that I believe that the sidewalks on Aviation are narrower than those in the Riviera Village. And that's why in the Riviera Village, it feels more spacious and there's more room for all that stuff. And because those are the sidewalks we would want, but that's not what they have on Aviation and
Want their
Artesia.
sidewalks.
But these signs don't go up by right, they go
Yeah,
up
I get
with
it. I get it.
permission. They have an engineer
Signs
look
will
at,
say- I have
a
is the
comment
sidewalk
here.
wide enough? Is the sign too big, right? So,
You can have a sign, but it has to be, so you would say you can have a sign, but it has to be really small to fit in this area. Is that what you're?
I mean, an engineer could look at it and say, you've got a really narrow area. The size sign that you have won't work. Either reduce it if that's an option, or it might just be no, there's no room,
Right.
So just a reminder to everyone, these are incentives. They're
Right.
just incentives.
Right.
And number 2, the property owner, the business owner is not going to do something that's going to obscure the walkway in front of them, because that would be counterproductive
Sure they are.
for them.
and they wouldn't be
They're gonna-
allowed to do it
They're
anyway.
And
going to
they're
put up
not
an A-frame
allowed-
sign to get you to stop in front of their store.
But they're,
And just remember, these A-frames or the products,
Sign.
right? The products that get put out in front, the purpose of them is to engage the pedestrian.
Right.
And because as any of us know who that have engaged with, been in a location where these things are, is that it's that one next thing that they do to help bring us in,
Oh, yeah, it's.
right?
Um,
It works every time. And that's why I believe it's being done, is because all of this is really about incentivizing, right? Using techniques that can incentivize
yeah.
people to come to the Artesia and to the corridor, and for businesses to want to open their shops. And it seems like the concern that if we that there's some safety issues and there's some crowding issues, I personally am confident that our staff is able to ascertain the appropriate dimensions of an A-frame sign. I'm just confident that they can do this.
Thank you. Yeah.
I bought this shirt.
They're all
I bought
college
this
grads
shirt on
then.
the street in Manhattan Beach.
There you go.
So Commissioner Lamb, thank you for putting the focus on incentivification as opposed to trip and fall hazards. I think that's an excellent way to look at it, and you have convinced me that every store should have an A-frame.
Good, so we're all thumbs up? Are we all thumbs up?
Wait, I got one question first.
Oh, wait a minute.
Sorry. Why are A-frames currently allowed in Riviera Village and not on Artesian Aviation? Isn't that all C2
They hate
pedestrian?
north.
Yeah, it's a Riviera Village overlay zone,
Yeah.
and there's some,
And those allow A-frames?
yes.
And see how well they're doing?
And it's, there's a special exemption too for menu, A-frames for menus.
Or
So-
like,
so
they'll
they
say,
could actually-
like Rockefeller. come
Oil
and
It's kind of an
Screwed on.
inconsistent,
No, no, no,
a
no,
conflict in our
Sandwich
ordinance
boards.
that we prohibit A-frame, but we also allow them associated with menus. So This is kind of cleaning that up.
Those are all menu A-frames in Riviera Village?
They're supposed to be. That's,
Unless it's a Hennessy location?
what's that?
Just kidding. Okay, strike that. from the
Okay,
record.
we got all thumbs up. Oh, we're all thumbs up on this, A-frames? We all, come on, give me a thumbs up. There we go, all right. We're beyond that. Okay, so A-frame signs are allowed. What was our next one that we tripped over here? Pedestrian bicycle access between adjacent commercial and residential properties. Who was a thumbs down on that?
Well, I think he wanted
Matt?
to clarify.
So as is, I'm thumbs down because as proposed, I don't think there should be a limit on the 4 units and up or on the bigger projects. It should be all.
Oh, you want to open it? Okay.
Small units.
That sounds great to me.
The one under A-frame signs?
Wherever it's possible.
Wherever
Yeah,
possible.
we're,
So, for example, a new R3 development on Matthews or on Huntington? What's the one just south of Artesia?
Vanderbilt?
Oh, Vanderbilt. New R3 development can have some gateway or pass through or work things. Or Matthews
Matthews or
should have some
Vanderbilt,
connection to
yeah.
Artesia. I don't think it should just be 4 units and above because those are so rare.
Yeah.
to
Okay.
be built this
So
up.
sort of where feasible. How's that?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
consider applying to all residential,
Yeah.
all adjacent residential properties.
Yes.
Okay.
Do we have thumbs up on that?
Yes.
We are all thumbs up. Cool. Okay, so
think
what was our
that's
next one? That was it?
Uh-huh.
We tripped up on retail displays as well.
Outdoor retail display. Are we thumbs up on outdoor retail
That's
displays?
Boswell. I mean.
Come on, Mr. Boswell.
Come on, Doug.
Come on, Doug.
Doug,
I just
there's not.
had
Doug.
this
It
picture
does
in
not
my
have to be
Doug,
you.
I bought this shirt on the street. man.
Remembering-
Let me describe it to Doug.
Remembering the treasure chest on
Okay,
the,
let
on
me
the
describe
pier
it,
where they
Doug.
just put more and more racks out every
No,
year.
it's not like that,
And it
Doug.
became like this maze. You couldn't
Spider
even find
across the street.
You couldn't even find the door. You had to
I'm
go
describing it to
through.
you right now,
Hey, I
okay?
was
You're
there.
walking along the sidewalk and there's a clothing store, right?
Yeah.
And right out in front, they have a sale rack. And in that sale rack is maybe 10 items, if that. It's just enough to go, oh, that's a cute pair of shorts. Yeah, I'm going to
Tell
buy
that to
them.
the
It's got a
treasure
50%
chest.
And he
off
takes you
sign
into
above
the
it.
store.
Tell that to the treasure
It's
chest
not
guy.
racks and racks and
I
racks.
had more
It's
stuff
not
outside the store
like
than inside.
Memorial Day sale or anything. No, it's just a cute little rack.
Oh, well, as long as it's cute.
Well,
All right, are we all thumbs
We
up
just don't-
on the outdoor?
Can we put the word cute in there?
Come on, Commissioner
Not
Boswell.
really.
Yay, we got all thumbs up. Okay, good.
All right.
Good,
Okay.
okay.
But I'm not buying any of that crap.
We have-
We'll give a summary a shot. You want to try to summarize, Sean?
So the recommendation as proposed by staff with the following planning commission companion recommendations related, one, outdoor dining, consider upper limit and consider AUP if determined a nuisance referred, okay, sorry, hold on. Outdoor dining.
You got this.
Consider an upper limit for requiring a CUP, and consider adding a requirement that if the AUP is determined, if the outdoor dining is determined to be a nuisance with the AUP, it's referred to the planning commission.
Yeah.
And then the second item, referring to the restaurant requirement for CUP or for amending it to require an AUP, consider a upper limit of 5,000 square feet to require a conditional use permit. And then the third item, A-frame signs, okay. However, consider prioritizing sidewalk widening, or are you okay without that?
Sidewalk.
Well, it's
No,
kind
I
of
had-
already in the,
Yeah, I had a
ACAP,
6-0.
right?
Okay.
No changes to that one.
And then,
Bring it to the
so no
forefront of
change to
their
A-frame
attention.
sign. And then the concerning pedestrian bicycle access, consider applying to
All properties.
all
All
adjacent residential properties.
Yes.
And,
Adjacent and residential and commercial properties, right?
Yes, well, it's going to apply to all, there's no like
all properties.
unit, yeah,
Okay.
Right.
okay.
So that's
So the motion, we do a motion to, I'd like to put a motion forward to pass the resolution with the changes outlined by Sean, just now in the implementation of the proposals
Do we
in
have a
ACAP.
second?
I second that.
Take a roll call vote, please. Okay, wait.
All right, let me comment. No, like, I think these bullet points are very easy, but I still think that what's in front of us is a mitigated negative declaration, which basically says that there's environmental impacts if we don't take these kind of measures. With these kind of measures, we're good. Did I summarize a mitigated negative declaration correctly?
Well, it's just with mitigation.
With mitigation, we're good.
Right.
Without mitigation, there's potential for environmental impact.
Potentially significant impacts.
Okay.
Like,
But you're adopting the mitigation measure.
Yeah, we're adopting the mitigation. But that's a bigger, in my mind, that's a bigger, this is easy.
Anywhere
Like,
on our team?
This is preference, this
This is
is,
a recommendation to council, right? So
but the environmental thing is us, we have to approve that.
No, you recommend the council approves that.
it's just a recommendation.
But I can't, like,
So would you like that to come back in front of us or something?
yeah, like
could do that.
and also, like, I haven't had enough time to go through the actual, like, detailed changes. Like, this is easy. This is just high level, 30,000 foot, yes, no, with changes. But I think there's more, even recommendation, I think there's more here. And
There is, but you've read the resolution. I mean, the resolution is, I mean, it's a specific set of sort of, we recommend you do this and that.
I get it, but I don't, but there's changes to our general plan, there's changes to our municipal code, there's changes to so many things, and I don't expect the council to read 600 pages of changes in environmental documents, and like, they have to, because they're ultimately going to approve it, but like, I get recommendations, but there's just when you're recommending some, far off thing, and there's recommending changes of this size in one shot, so.
How would we amend what would be a friendly amendment to pass what we went today, and then
So if I'm the only one, I'm not going
have
to hold
that
it up.
aspect?
Like-
Well, no, explain it, have
Yeah, yeah.
that aspect come back in front of us?
Well, so
or-
what we've agreed to, we have agreed to, right? Like, I don't think that, I'm not going to change my mind on
right. No,
what
I
the opinion
gotcha.
is, but I would like more time to go through the rest of it and like understand it and digest it and then make a recommendation. Because there may be other things that are not on this list, right? Other things that I want to recommend or highlight or bring up or change or whatever. Like, for example, the rooftop dining, or that's not on their list, but I asked about it, and yeah, I know.
But that's
different. If we as a planning commission.
Let's deal with that
later.
specifically.
Okay.
Why don't we
Let's
just
talk about
add
that.
That's not in the ACAP.
Yeah, that's
I
not,
know.
we're not voting on that because it isn't even part of
So
this.
it's not it,
whole
but we
thing.
have been given direction for this calendar year from the city council to look into it. So if there's, it'd have to be approved by city council to be amended and included. And then when we decided to implement, it would go before this body. To try to throw other implementation things into this from the ACAP is kind of out of the scope right now.
I get it.
A couple of things. One is I do want to make a friendly amendment. But before I do that, I wanted to just address your concerns. And that is, I went through the resolution. I went through a document, IS, whatever that, M&D,
Initial
right?
study.
Right, I went through that document. It identifies all the municipal code changes with the underlines and the strikeouts. And I think that's also the underlines and the strikeouts are all in the resolution.
Right.
Right?
They are.
What I found is that it's very simple in some respects, in that these are all that's what's listed here is all that is being changed.
Right.
But why it's so comprehensive is that by law, the municipal code has to be changed, as well as the general plan, the land use element, and there's different places in the municipal code that has to be changed. So even though it looks like there's 100 changes, there's not really that many changes because right?
Yeah.
Because
There's
they're
multiple
duplicates.
documents being changed
Right,
all at
right.
once.
Right, and there's multiple places in the same document, right, that
Where you
has to
have
be
to
changed.
change.
So, I mean, I
So it's
understand your concerns, but after going through it a couple of times, I realized, oh, it's not that comprehensive.
And this isn't the
Right.
last set of changes we're going to be
Oh, yeah,
going
no,
through.
this is the
just
first
a
one. They'll be-
wave of these
They'll be
things.
waving
Easy stuff.
Right.
And I'll even add that when the state requires us to go through these initial studies and to answer all these questions for the 300 plus pages, it makes us create answers for every single question that it produces. If you reread it and read it, you're going to see a lot of repetitive answers in there
Yes.
that just solidify every single one. I mean, it's a lot of the same stuff.
So it's not as complicated. So that's my first comment. My second one is I want to add a friendly amendment. And going back to the Article 27. Okay, I would like to recommend, with your approval, right, that we have the council direct the staff to have a specific assessment,
Report.
traffic report, right, that clearly identifies what the traffic impact would be. You have already said, based on anecdotal, right? But let's confirm that. Let's confirm that. Article 27 is very important.
Yeah.
It's important to all of us. And
To the
so
residents, they voted on it.
to the residents, they voted on it.
They don't remember.
Let's make good on our commitment.
Yes.
Yes.
Is
Okay.
that a yes, a friendly amendment?
I second that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hensley, I detect concern.
I have trouble recommending something that says, this won't trigger Article 27 Measure DD because there's less than 150 trip generation when we have just anecdotal evidence in the public hearing that
Right.
doesn't. Like,
Well,
Right,
that's
but
why
now,
she's
but
asking for a
she's
report.
I know,
addressed that.
but how do you recommend something to say, recommend it, oh, and by the way, study this that we've already told you is not a problem and we recommended it? Like,
Well, we're actually saying that,
It is.
if I understand it correctly, is that we recommend this, but we don't have all of the information that you should consider, council, including this traffic impacts.
Well said.
That's basically what you're saying, right?
I won't belabor the point. I'm
No, Matthew,
So,
we're making a recommendation to city council to have this report and to look at this report. But is that not okay with you, Matthew?
So again, the resolution has, it's fine.
No,
I'm not
you
gonna belabor the
do
point.
have to, you're not belaboring it, you
No,
have to explain it.
I've made my points and what I am uncomfortable about, and it's fine. Again, I like the ACAP, I like the plan, gave clear direction on the points they asked about. It's good. Like,
Okay.
don't need to be here all
So
night.
we have a motion. We have a second. We have a friendly amendment. We have a second to the friendly amendment. Let me remember how to do this. First we vote on the one with the friendly amendment, right? And if that fails, then we go back to the
Friendly
original
amendment,
motion.
no, it's not a substitute motion.
vote,
That's
it's
the
not
one you vote on first.
Right.
Oh, okay, right.
She just
right.
amended her motion. She accepted it. That's the motion.
Okay, good. Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Could we have a roll call vote?
Absolutely. Commissioner Lamb,
yes.
Commissioner Hensley,
I'll abstain for lack of information.
Commissioner Hazeltine,
Yes.
Chairperson Gaddis,
Yes.
Commissioner Godek,
Yes.
Commissioner Boswell.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, you
Thank
guys.
you.
Great presentation.
And
Award-winning.
award-winning, congratulations
You
on
get to
your
keep the award
award.
another week.
Just put that in front of us to feel the pressure.
So, look, everybody else respects it.
Everybody else
I would
likes it.
never.
That's great. Okay, so items continued from previous agendas.
Where are we? We have none.
Okay. Items for discussion prior to action.
None.
Items from staff.
Brandy's back on Monday, and I'm very excited. And that's the only item I have.
Okay, commission items and referrals to staff.
Questions? That question?
Do you have anything?
June 15th, what's on the agenda? I have mixed information.
We will have its objective residential development standards.
Okay.
We'll be bringing that back. Also, the little bit of house cleaning on, follow-up actually on the Grub House. We discovered the underlying lots, we thought they were tied by deed recordation. It turns out they weren't. So we're bringing a parcel map to create less parcels than exist. That's one of the things you can do with a parcel map. We don't have a parcel merger process here at the city. So we're going to bring that back. They're going through plan check. It's not going to hold them up, but we need to have those lots. You can't build buildings across property lines. So we got to clean that up.
Okay.
So we're bringing that. We're hoping it doesn't take more than a few minutes. There's not a lot to it. It's something we didn't realize.
So they're going to make one parcel where there are multiple
Yes,
parcels?
correct.
So that they don't have to have multiple buildings?
So they can actually build their building.
Yeah, they're not allowed to really, I mean, you can't meet a setback if you're building over the property line. And then there's building code requirements for fire ratings over, across property lines. It's just it's a kind of a mess. And we thought those properties were held as one by grant deed or by legal description, but they weren't. And so we're like, oh, crud. The building department was like, Sean. I'm like, oh, no. So anyway, but we're not holding them up, and hopefully we'll be able to take care of that quickly. I think that's it.
I think that's it. Okay.
Are we
Okay.
talking about the city budget at some point?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. And then the capital improvements
Yes.
program and the consistency with the general plan. So there's a determination every city is required to make that the capital improvement plan or program is consistent with your general plan. So I pulled together an analysis that it clearly demonstrates pretty much by definition, it's doing all this infrastructure improvements, maintaining your infrastructure, your improvements to public safety facilities, recreational facilities, and those are all clearly consistent. When I pulled a number of policies, it just demonstrates that's a primary function of the city as depicted or as it described in the general plan is to maintain infrastructure and roadways and sewers and we have a whole we have a utilities element which is really unique. I don't know of any other jurisdiction that has that, but our general plan has a utilities element. So it's all about maintaining our infrastructure. So.
All right.
I have a question about that. I think it was on once before, so I was looking at it.
Yeah.
It seems like it's a formality.
It kind of is.
There's nothing that there's no real requirement that we're to, there's no criteria, there's no, judgment
it's just a consistency finding, and you basically, if you can connect, the general programs that are included in the CIP with, policies there. And it's not like each one, the general plan policy really covers, a majority of those programs and those
Yeah.
projects. So it's
Checks
kind
and
of a
balances.
formality. We do it every year. It's,
Okay, just a checkbox.
yeah,
But
it's
if we
kind
want
of,
to be truly disruptive,
We don't.
we can.
No, we can't.
I'm looking at this man here.
I'm the most congenial.
And a couple more questions. What's going in to the Denny's?
we're getting, we had Starbucks circling the Denny's.
That's a big
wanting
Starbucks.
wanted a drive-through but the way they wanted the drive-through, it was just a big giant drive-through. And we're like, no, we've got ACAP has specific
Oh, excellent.
discouragements
Yeah.
for drive-through.
There we go.
Yeah.
So we said, well, you can do the drive-through, but it's got to be, around the back part of the parking lot and kind of run along the back, the east side of the store.
Yeah.
And then open up the west side and, give us some outdoor dining and all the stuff we want to see. And they're thinking about it.
Oh,
Is that code for they're not coming back?
What's that?
Is that code for they're not coming back?
Yeah. Well, maybe, I don't know. They're still trying. They go away for about 6 months, 8 months, and then they come back. So that's about it. Yeah.
right, Greg and Dave.
Anything else, Sheila?
We're counting on you.
All right.
Anything else?
So any other,
Motion to adjourn.
all right, do I have a second?
Okay.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Where'd
Oh.
that go?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against say no. Okay, we are adjourned until June 15th.
15th, yes. All right.
All right, great.
Thanks for coming, everybody.